A 16-year-old fighter stands inside the Blood Sea Arena after defeating 9 champions without a single break. The tournament was designed to exhaust Cain Lorifer before he could reach the purist's true prodigy. Yet every defensive specialist, runner, and bloodline genius sent against him has already fallen. Only Zima remains, wrapped in red lightning and carrying one hidden technique powerful enough to kill. The final prodigy strikes Cain's head before most spectators can even perceive his sudden acceleration. Cain drops, and the purist faction finally celebrates the public execution disguised as a fair tournament. Then, golden flames spread beneath the teenager's wounds, and Cain rises before their cheers can finish. He enters a state where thought, instinct, and movement become one perfectly controlled flow. Zima attacks again, but this time, Cain is already waiting where the final strike must end. The purists lose their champion, their plan, and every excuse for why an outsider defeated them. That is when the High Blood Elder abandons the tournament and attacks Cain personally. An ancient titan drops one colossal palm toward the exhausted teenager, carrying enough power to erase the arena. The blood sea explodes beneath the impact, crimson waves swallow the battlefield, and Cain's presence disappears. Everyone believes the boy has finally died, until an angry voice rises from beneath the blood. Cain emerges through the crimson water, golden fire covering wounds that should have ended his story. How did the Academy's weakest student become someone a titan needed to attack from the shadows? To understand that, the story returns to the beginning, when another red-eyed boy lost his entire world. Long before Cain entered the Academy, a remote desert nation belonged to the mysterious Crimson People. They had white hair, red eyes, and generations of experience surviving land nobody else considered valuable. Their labor transformed empty sand into cities, roads, and farms capable of resisting the desert itself. That success eventually attracted the attention of Sunit, ruler of the enormous Great Star Kingdom. Previous kings ignored the desert, but Sunit suddenly wanted everything after the Crimson People improved it. His diplomats offered peace under conditions that would reduce an independent nation to obedient servants. When the Crimson leaders refused, Sunit used their answer as proof that diplomacy had supposedly failed. Royal officials spread stories describing the isolated people as violent enemies preparing to attack innocent families. By the time the army mobilized, ordinary citizens believed conquest was actually an act of self-defense. Tanks crossed the desert while aircraft darkened the sky, and heavily armed soldiers surrounded the capital. The Crimson fighters resisted with courage, but courage could not replace weapons, numbers, or outside allies. Within 1 month, scarlet stains covered streets that had survived centuries of wind and hunger. On a mountain above the city, a 4-year-old boy watched his entire world disappear beneath smoke. His white hair moved in the hot wind, yet his red eyes showed neither panic nor visible grief. 5 soldiers climbed the slope and discovered the final child sitting completely alone above the ruins. One soldier raised his rifle immediately, delighted that the official order allowed no survivors. Another man, named Jonah, pushed the weapon aside and demanded that they spare someone clearly defenseless. The others warned that mercy would make them traitors, while the child continued watching the burning capital. Their argument ended when the youngest soldier forced his rifle forward and prepared to pull the trigger. The child finally turned, lifted one small hand, and closed his fingers, without changing his expression. Stone spikes erupted beneath all 5 soldiers, ending both the murderous threat and Jonah's desperate objection. The boy did not celebrate, because their deaths could not restore a single person below the mountain. He only admitted that mastering his power sooner might have allowed him to save everyone. Streams of crimson energy rose from the fallen soldiers and wrapped themselves around his narrow shoulders. The energy hardened into a red robe, with 2 pale words glowing across its back. Those words announced the name history would remember: Red King. 10 years later, the Great Star Kingdom celebrated the extermination with music, fireworks, and military parades. Children sat on their father's shoulders while veterans marched through streets polished for the national holiday. Some soldiers smiled proudly, while others carried the silent shame of knowing what had truly happened. The government called the war necessary, but every survivor from the battlefield understood it was genocide. Then a white-haired teenager stepped into the middle of the avenue reserved for the marching army. The crowd first noticed his fearless posture, then his red eyes, and finally the robe behind him. Music stopped as older soldiers recognized a face belonging to a people who supposedly no longer existed. One frightened recruit fired before any commander could understand the danger standing among their formation. A bullet stopped several centimeters from the teenager's head, suspended inside an invisible crimson field. The Red King caught the medal between two fingers and returned it with terrifyingly greater force. The first formation vanished beneath the impact, and the celebration instantly became a battle for survival. Armored vehicles fired from every street, while aircraft approached from bases surrounding the royal capital. The Red King kept walking, turning the kingdom's greatest weapons into useless ornaments around his advance. By sunrise, ruined defenses surrounded the palace, and King Sunit finally faced the consequence he had postponed. Sunit called the survivor a monster, hoping morality might protect him after armies and propaganda failed. The Red King calmly reminded him that the kingdom called extermination duty when powerless people were dying. Now that violence had reached the royal palace, the same ruler suddenly discovered compassion and restraint. Sunit had no answer strong enough to survive the truth, and the kingdom he built began collapsing. Yet revenge brought the Red King no peace, family, or reason to remain in that small world. He looked beyond the atmosphere and decided that even an entire planet could not contain his path. That ancient life should have ended there, but its memories eventually found another boy named Cain Lorifer. Cain's story begins at 14, inside a school where one examination determines almost every student's future. Humanity has spread across a gigantic empire filled with monsters, noble families, armies, and competing races. Every awakened fighter channels Wave, an energy capable of transforming ordinary bodies into living weapons. Essence cultivators control external forces through an evolution core, while astral cultivators rebuild their bodies internally. Talent determines how quickly either path advances, and society treats those measurements like permanent social value. Cain receives the result everyone fears: low tier 1, the weakest rating among his entire generation. Prestigious universities immediately become impossible, while teachers begin speaking as if his life has already ended. His father died serving the imperial military force, leaving Cain with pride, grief, and very little protection. The boy refuses to beg for sympathy, but the academy hallways make weakness impossible to ignore. Jonathan, once Cain's closest friend, now waits near the exit with 2 followers and a triumphant smile. Cain protected Jonathan for years, especially when stronger students discovered how easily the frightened boy could be bullied. Everything changed after Jonathan awakened peak Tier 3 talent and received an invitation from Hellblazer University. Power did not simply improve Jonathan's future, it convinced him that loyalty to weaker people was embarrassing. He arrives with Cynthia, the girl Cain once liked, now openly choosing the promising student beside her. Jonathan announces his university acceptance and explains that Cynthia will accompany him as an invited partner. The information is meant to hurt, but Cain gives them nothing except a cold request to move. Kieran, Jonathan's largest follower, decides humiliation needs a final joke about Cain's dead military father. Cain stops walking because talent may decide status, but it does not decide what insults he accepts. He turns and warns Kieran to repeat the statement, while every nearby student watches the confrontation. Kieran reaches forward carelessly, still believing the officially weaker boy cannot answer without destroying his own future. Cain attacks first, moving with enough skill to surprise everyone who expected fear and hesitation. Jonathan crosses the hallway before the punch lands and strikes Cain backward into a hard stone wall. The glowing energy around Jonathan reveals he has already become a level 2 Essence Wave warrior. He orders Cain to remember his place, performing for the audience while hiding his old fear behind arrogance. Cain rises through the pain and leaves without offering Jonathan the satisfaction of another failed attack. Outside the academy, anger shakes his hands, but the humiliation also clarifies the rule governing his world. People speak differently when strength protects a person from consequences, regardless of loyalty or character. Cain cannot change his measured talent, yet he can still decide what happens after receiving that result. With universities closed to him, he chooses the same military force that once employed his father. The decision sends Cain toward the collapsing Lightning Military Academy and its enormous Imperial Lightning Fort. During the journey, a mechanical voice suddenly speaks inside his mind and begins scanning his entire body. Cain first suspects an illusion, but translucent information follows his thoughts with impossible accuracy. The presence identifies itself as Apex, spirit of something called the Absolute Life Form System. Apex explains that Cain is its vessel, although the spirit refuses to reveal every reason behind their connection. The system can analyze threats, measure physical changes, store knowledge, and unlock specialized modules over time. It does not give Cain unlimited strength, and Apex makes that limitation painfully clear from their first conversation. Low Tier 1 talent remains Low Tier 1 talent, unless Cain finds methods strong enough to rebuild himself. Still, precise information can turn discipline into progress and turn dangerous opportunities into calculated risks. Behind another sealed portion of Cain's soul, an enormous gate burns beneath chains of contradictory energies. Apex watches that gate privately, knowing the consciousness beyond it is older and far more dangerous. Cain enters the military academy without seeing the prison inside himself or understanding whose memories wait there. The Imperial Lightning Fort treats every cadet as a future soldier rather than a protected student. Training begins immediately with physical tests, tactical lessons, combat drills, and rankings displayed before everyone. Many cadets arrive from noble families, carrying superior techniques, expensive artifacts, and confidence purchased before birth. Cain arrives with weak talent, basic experience, and an artificial intelligence nobody else can detect. His first important ally is Levi Hellblazer, a red-haired heir rejected by his powerful family for complicated reasons. Levi is proud, impatient, and talented enough to cause problems whenever someone questions his strength. Behind the attitude, Cain recognizes another boy measuring himself against a family that already decided his value. Their third companion is Bielzy, a blue-haired girl whose ice abilities are matched by her emotional distance. She trusts slowly, speaks sharply, and observes every weakness before deciding whether someone deserves another chance. The trio does not become friends through cheerful introductions. Survival forces them to evaluate one another honestly. Their academy soon announces a secret trial inside a controlled wilderness filled with wave beasts. Cadets must earn points, manage supplies, and prove they can think once instructors are no longer beside them. Cain studies tracks before fighting, choosing isolated targets, while other teams rush toward the loudest possible rewards. An Earth Lion pack becomes his first chance to demonstrate that knowledge can partially compensate for raw talent. He separates one beast from the group, attacks its vulnerable angle, and avoids wasting energy on dramatic movements. Levi brings explosive confidence, Bielzy controls distance with ice, and Cain holds their timing together. The victory earns resources, but more importantly, it changes how his companions interpret the Low Tier 1 label. Deeper inside the trial, an abyssal demon appears where no ordinary cadet should encounter one. Its strength transforms a competitive examination into a genuine emergency before the instructors can intervene. Cain's instincts demand retreat, yet every available route leaves another cadet exposed to the creature. Apex maps the demon's movements, while Cain studies a narrow opening between its attacks. He concentrates his wave into kinetic blast and closes the distance where one mistake means immediate death. The first impact barely changes the monster's posture, revealing how badly the official numbers favor it. Cain refuses to repeat the same attack, and instead uses terrain, timing, and the demon's confidence against it. His final strike lands through the opening Apex predicted, dropping an opponent the trial never expected him to face. Victory leaves Cain injured, exhausted, and holding rewards far more valuable than a normal cadet deserves. Among them is Fiend Devour, a cultivation technique that absorbs and processes energy with dangerous speed. Apex warns that the method can strengthen Cain rapidly or destroy the body attempting to contain it. For Cain, a safe technique guaranteeing permanent weakness is simply another kind of fatal risk. He accepts Fiend Devour and begins building power his measured talent should never support. That decision brings attention from Nira Kylor, a noble cadet furious whenever Cain surpasses someone with better blood. Nyra first treats him as an annoyance, then as humiliation, and finally as a threat requiring permanent removal. She contacts her older brother Dimitri, a level 4 essence warrior capable of killing Cain directly. The siblings wait until Cain accepts a solo mission inside Whisper Forest, far beyond reliable witnesses. Apex detects 2 signatures approaching, identifies Nyra, and measures Dimitri's overwhelming cultivation level. Cain's pulse accelerates, because bravery cannot change the simple mathematics of a direct confrontation. Instead of running toward open ground, he remembers a level 5 metal hyena controlling nearby territory. The beast is more dangerous than Dimitri, but unlike the assassin, it has no reason to prioritize Cain. Nira steps from the forest, expecting fear, while Dimitri quietly prepares to finish the mission she purchased. Cain provokes them, flees along a route selected earlier, and makes the stronger man chase too confidently. Dimitri crosses into the metal hyena's territory and instantly becomes the most powerful visible intruder. The monster attacks, forcing him into a costly battle while Nira watches the plan collapse. Cain circles through the trees and returns behind her before either sibling understands his actual objective. He disables Nira and uses her survival as leverage, preventing Dimitri from ending the beast fight early. The method is ruthless because Cain knows hesitation will only give two killers another opportunity. Dimitri defeats the metal hyena eventually, but the battle drains his energy and leaves serious openings. Cain attacks from the blind side, driving the weakened warrior toward the creature's final desperate resistance. Even then, victory requires everything he possesses, and the forest nearly becomes his grave several times. When Dimitri finally falls, Nira waits for mercy she never intended to offer her intended victim. Cain ends the threat, then stands over the silence while the red light inside his eyes slowly fades. His calm disappears with it, and both hands begin trembling after the reality of his choices returns. Apex refuses to congratulate him, pointing out that survival has consequences, even when the decision was necessary. The shaking proves Cain has not become emotionally empty, and the spirit quietly considers that important. The siblings leave behind a space ring containing crystals, beast materials, medicine, and another crucial technique. Blood refinement allows Cain to strengthen the body needed to endure Fiend Devourer's accelerating energy intake. One technique becomes the fuel, while the other prevents the engine from tearing itself apart. The Keylor family sends level 7 investigators almost immediately after Nira and Dimitri stop reporting. Cain returns to class, controls every expression, and trains while stronger enemies search for physical evidence. Bielzy understands more than she says, but she keeps the secret after judging the danger herself. The Academy ranking trials soon provide Cain a public opportunity to replace suspicion with undeniable achievement. 5 pillars test strength, resilience, speed, destructive power, and mental endurance under increasingly brutal conditions. Cadets from famous families expect their bloodlines to dominate, while Cain's old low-tier 1 record invites laughter. Inside the strength trial, escalating weight crushes weaker candidates long before Cain reaches his true physical limit. Fiend Devourer, blood refinement, and precise wave control carry him beyond every reasonable prediction. The resilience chamber removes oxygen and increases heat while forcing each participant to ration energy carefully. Cain refuses to panic, using his system to monitor organs while his will keeps his body moving. For the speed trial, raw movement is not enough, so he studies every obstacle and removes wasted motion. Fragments from the Red King's experience help him shape a Sora form, transforming precise perception into explosive acceleration. The destruction test expects overwhelming output, while Cain combines wave burst with control most cadets cannot imitate. Then, the Pillar of Mind subjects him to escalating mental pain, capable of breaking veteran soldiers. Cain endures memories, pressure, and agony until his result surpasses the standards of ordinary wave champions. 1 ranking could be luck, but 5 top performances erase every comfortable explanation available to his critics. The board once expected to announce Cain's limitations, instead announces that a new monster has entered the academy. Levi enjoys the shocked faces far more openly, while Bielza treats the result like confirmation rather than surprise. Cain leaves the rankings without celebrating because every public victory tells hidden enemies where to aim next. The mental ranking attracts an older warrior named Oliver, who brings Cain to the mysterious Titan Tower. There, Cain meets Zarak, one of the 9 pillars protecting the entire collapsing lightning sector. Zarak appears relaxed, but the river-like pressure surrounding him makes every ordinary movement feel deliberately restrained. He explains that Cain possesses something far rarer than exceptional talent, a 3rd sacred organ. Most cultivators awaken either a rebirth heart or an evolution core, depending on their chosen path. Cain's soul also contains a secret organ capable of generating ego waves through concentrated willpower. This discovery opens the ego eternal path, a route where identity itself becomes a source of power. Zarak demonstrates by turning his personality into a living river, carrying both nourishment and unstoppable destruction. He names that manifestation an alter ego, the visual and spiritual shape a cultivator gives personal conviction. Cain cannot build his own by copying another person, because imitation would collapse under genuine pressure. He must understand what drives him, which parts belong to Cain, and which emotions came from elsewhere. Zarak accepts the boy as a core disciple, partly from curiosity and partly from genuine admiration. The relationship gives Cain powerful protection, but his master refuses to remove every dangerous obstacle personally. Zarak wants a student capable of surviving the world, not a decorative heir protected from every consequence. Back at the fort, combat instructor Wink pushes Cain until his wave output reaches impossible percentages. Exhaustion strips away conscious restraint, allowing a colder, red presence to stare through the teenager's eyes. Even a wave champion recognizes that the will behind that glance does not belong to an ordinary child. Cain wakes with violent pain and almost no memory of the pressure he projected across the auditorium. This is the first public hint that another identity is moving behind the sealed gate. Training continues because the military does not pause simply because its most unusual cadet contains dangerous secrets. Cain studies wave focus, wave transmutation, wave cloak, and the enormous burst techniques straining his meridians. He also begins hypnosis training under Zarek, learning that willpower can influence behavior without touching the body. The ability frightens Cain more than ordinary attacks, since misuse can erase freedom while leaving no visible wound. Zarek therefore forces him to practice control, purpose, and resistance before granting any serious authority. During another wilderness mission, Cain and Bealzi discover soldiers being hunted by criminals far above their level. The pair remains hidden, but Cain's anger nearly exposes them after witnessing innocent people treated as disposable tools. Bealzi stops him from charging into a battle they cannot win, and silently teaches him another survival lesson. Strength is not only the courage to advance, sometimes it is enduring helplessness until action becomes possible. Cain carries the shame back to the academy, determined that future weakness will never demand the same silence. That promise is tested quickly when a gigantic wave beast horde begins advancing toward Corin City. The attack is too coordinated to be natural, and thousands of civilians have almost no time to evacuate. Cadets become soldiers overnight as defense lines form between the city walls and a moving ocean of monsters. Cain, Levi, and Beelzy fight together until fatigue changes every breath into a conscious decision. Behind the horde, an injured Aatrox wave champion named Sonar searches for a place to recover. Human lessons describe the Aatrox Immortus race as cruel enemies whose biological armor grows directly from their bodies. Sonar confirms the danger without confirming every piece of propaganda, because desperation has made him equally trapped. Cain reaches him while protecting his friends, and a battle begins far beyond anything their levels should survive. Beelzy freezes damaged limbs, Levi forces openings with fire, and Cain studies every injury the system detects. The Aatrox still overwhelms them, turning coordinated attacks into temporary delays rather than meaningful damage. Levi eventually falls, Beelzy stops responding, and Cain faces an incoming strike with no safe movement remaining. Time seems to slow as he chooses between retreat and the lives lying behind him. Cain decides to continue, even though the final attack will certainly kill him with the enemy. Grief and rage tear through his self-control, widening the crack within the chained gate inside his soul. When Cain's eyes open again, the boy is no longer directing the body. The Red King observes Sonar with the bored attention of a ruler examining an unexpectedly persistent insect. He moves through attacks Cain could barely perceive and answers with techniques the teenager never learned. Sonar's confidence turns into terror as the supposedly weaker human controls the entire battlefield without visible effort. The Red King questions him, tests the limits of the unfamiliar world, and prepares to consume his soul. Even Apex can only watch as the ancient consciousness uses Cain's body like a temporary doorway. Before complete possession becomes possible, the gate's chains react and drag the invading will backward. Cain awakens beside Sonar's broken body, unable to explain how the battle ended or why he survived. An abyssal demon arrives before he can recover, attracted by the collapse of the city's defenses. Zarek appears at the decisive moment, shielding his student and confronting the new enemy above Corin City. Their restrained exchange alone reshapes the battlefield, showing Cain how irrelevant ordinary warriors become at higher ranks. Zarek's anger rises after the demon sacrifices more than 10,000 wave beasts to strengthen itself. His river-like alter ego floods the sky, carrying the weight of every life wasted for another creature's ambition. The battle ends with the surviving cadets inside recovery capsules and Corin City counting its losses. Cain's damaged body absorbs rare medical resources, while embryonic breathing keeps his cultivation active during unconsciousness. Levi wakes first and learns his estranged Hellblazer relatives have arrived to take him away. The family expects noble authority to overpower Academy rules, but Zarak refuses with almost insulting calm. When their spokesman threatens pressure, a revolving sphere of water removes the argument, along with his confidence. Zarak reminds them that military cadets belong under imperial protection, regardless of what powerful relatives prefer. Among the visitors is Magnus, the Hellblazer heir, capable of remaining composed beneath Zarak's killing intent. Magnus studies Levi from a distance, and later warns that threatening Cain would be a catastrophically expensive mistake. Once Cain awakens, Zarak tests his mind and confirms that the boy entered mind over body during recovery. His disciple has improved again, but the unexplained death of Sonar remains impossible for any honest theory. Zarak guides Cain toward forming an alter ego, unintentionally unlocking the first clear memories of the Red King. In another lifetime, the white-haired child watched soldiers climb the mountain above his burning homeland. Cain experiences the scene from inside that empty red gaze, feeling facts where grief should have lived. The memory continues through the victory parade, the falling kingdom, and a hunger extending beyond the planet. Cain returns to the present, terrified that these are not visions, but memories from his own previous existence. Inside his soul, electromagnetic energy leaks through the gate and mixes the Red King's identity with his. The result becomes a dual alter ego, containing heroic protection and a colder instinct for absolute destruction. Zarak sees the dangerous contradiction, but he also recognizes an opportunity no known cultivation guide can explain. He helps Cain stabilize the manifestation and begins formal hypnosis instruction before the fusion grows uncontrollable. The teenager advances quickly, becoming a 2-star practitioner, while experienced candidates struggle with basic mental influence. One examination traps Cain inside a powerful illusion designed to test whether pain can override his awareness. Instead of fighting every image, he studies inconsistencies and breaks the constructed reality from within. The feat attracts Akira, a legendary hypnosis council member and another pillar of the sector. She sees potential for a healing hypnotist, someone capable of treating trauma rather than manufacturing obedience. Cain values the idea because his strongest victories have left wounds no medicine can accurately measure. At the same time, the Academy offers military specializations that determine each cadet's future role. Bielzy follows a hidden family mission, Levi chooses direct combat, and Cain enters assassination training. His instructor Jonathan teaches void state, an advanced discipline that suppresses presence, emotion, and wasted movement. The shared name reminds Cain of his former friend, but this Jonathan represents everything that boy never became. Assassination class emphasizes patience, preparation, disguises, and the difference between killing and completing an objective. Cain learns that a perfect attack begins before entering the target city and ends after every trail disappears. His first assignment sends him toward criminals operating beyond the protection of legitimate military channels. Old Fox, Great Tiger, Young Elephant, and Young Monkey believe the teenage buyer can be robbed easily. Cain lets their confidence place everyone where he needs them, then attacks with hypnosis and overwhelming close combat. Great Tiger resists long enough to reveal how dangerous a level 5 warrior remains under pressure. The encounter becomes a real battle, but Cain's ego wave breaks the group's coordination before his fists finish it. He leaves wearing a red helmet that distorts every feature and prevents observers from identifying the young soldier. The mission earns few destiny points, because killing weaker criminals no longer counts as a major achievement. That disappointing reward teaches Cain the system cannot become an excuse to hunt people for artificial progress. His second specialization appears far less violent, but eventually becomes equally important: genetic coding. Coders design controlled viruses capable of improving wave talent, physical traits, and biological compatibility. Most students need days to arrange a basic bronze vector without creating fatal genetic instability. Cain's AI chip maps every component, while his own visual memory lets him understand relationships between them. Instructor Camille initially suspects cheating when the low Tier 1 student produces a silver vector almost immediately. Further tests reveal something more alarming. Cain understands the structure well enough to create his own solutions. Lurin Sinar and Ophelia begin as skeptical classmates, but gradually become useful friends and professional rivals. Together, they study wave viruses, while Cain secretly develops stronger golden vectors with the system's assistance. His first successful enhancement raises the talent society declared permanent and proves the old measurement was only temporary. Each improvement carries mutation risks, so Cain records every reaction rather than treating biology like effortless magic. He also practices disguises, hypnosis, void state, and city infiltration for his formal assassination examination. The assigned target is Glacius, a criminal leader operating behind guards, cameras, and layers of purchased influence. Kane enters Rauk City under another identity, maps surveillance routes, and silently crosses protected districts. He manipulates a guard's senses, reaches the target, and completes the objective before the organization understands the breach. Rather than fleeing immediately, Kane follows the criminal network outward and eliminates the gang waiting in a forest cave. His instructors reward the completed mission, while Kane notices clues connecting Glacius to something far larger. That hidden organization becomes another threat, moving around his life without revealing its true objective. To measure his growing battle power, Kane enters Whisper Forest and challenges a level 5 Dread Lightning Lion. The beast's speed nearly catches him several times, proving higher statistics never replace combat judgment. Kane survives its lightning burst, closes the distance, and ends the hunt through adaptation rather than effortless dominance. Soon afterward, his assassination instructor sends him into Sahara City under the identity of Simon. The mission requires following noble criminals into a black obsidian facility operated by secret researchers. Kane enters knowing escape may become impossible, but the network connects directly to the organization hunting him. Inside the underground complex, scientists promise selected youths a legendary lineage through dangerous experimentation. The participants believe they are chosen holy children, while the researchers privately call them disposable guinea pigs. Morgana oversees the process, Orlando controls powerful puppets, and blood-filled recovery capsules line the laboratory. Iris, an undercover female warrior, attacks during the gathering and exposes strength approaching the Wave Champion rank. Her mission fails to secure the facility, leaving her trapped among enemies and uncertain participants. Kane remains hidden, communicates through Apex, and introduces himself only as King when Iris demands a name. The system analyzes the experimental lineage and discovers catastrophic flaws designed to collect data through failure. Kane spends Destiny Force stabilizing Iris because her wind law offers their best chance of escaping. One participant dies inside a capsule, confirming that the promised miracle is simply a trial conducted on human bodies. Researchers eventually throw Kane into a massive cauldron of superheated blood to strengthen the remaining subjects. Instead of dying, his blood refinement art devours the environment and generates a new reservoir called blood energy. The same machine designed to break him becomes the resource that pushes his auxiliary technique forward. When the laboratory opens the next stage, Kane explodes from captivity in a red hood and attacks the facility. Iris uses wind to clear a route while alarms summon guards from every level beneath Sahara City. Orlando deploys Wave Champion puppets, confident that no trapped experiment can match their combined defenses. Kane uses his new blood energy with assassination techniques, taking one puppet apart before confronting Orlando directly. The old man loses an arm, attempts to retreat, and finally realizes the quiet holy child was never genuine. Kane defeats Orlando and leaves the forest carrying evidence, resources, and knowledge about the larger organization. His system describes the victory almost casually, while Kane privately recognizes how dramatically his power has changed. Back at the Imperial Lightning Fort, graduation rankings are announced before thousands of gathered cadets. Kane stands first, with battle power matching early level 6 fighters, despite remaining far younger and officially weaker. An angry rival challenges the result, using a captured level 7 goldenback gorilla as proof. Kane activates Blood Lightning and defeats the creature before the audience can finish adjusting its expectations. His ego wave crosses another boundary during the confrontation, reaching willpower associated with Wave Kings. The military promotes him to Blood Lightning Vice Captain, giving the teenager responsibility over actual soldiers. He celebrates with Levi, Lurin, Ophelia, and the classmates who survived long enough to understand his path. Jonathan and Cynthia hear the news elsewhere, trapped inside futures that once looked far brighter than Kane's. Hellblazer University has treated Jonathan as mediocre, feeding resentment until his progress almost completely stops. Cynthia becomes the closest target for his frustration because admitting his own choices would hurt far more. Then they learn Kane is Zarek's core disciple and a military prodigy whose authority surpasses their imagination. The boy they abandoned has not merely caught them, he has entered a world they cannot currently reach. Kane does not witness their reaction because graduation has already replaced personal revenge with a larger battlefield. Captain Aaron receives the new vice captains with a simple test: withstand one unrestricted punch without retreating. Kane accepts, absorbs the impact, and answers the command structure with respect rather than unnecessary pride. His first real campaign is called The Hunt, a massive operation through the legendary Blade Mountain region. Military units and university students will compete for resources while fighting wave beasts and hidden hostile factions. Aaron refuses to design every formation himself because vice captains must prove they can actually lead. Kane studies his battalion before speaking, separating veterans, specialists, scouts, and uncertain younger soldiers. Michelle and two experienced squad leaders expect another gifted teenager more interested in glory than casualties. Instead, Kane asks for their criticism, adjusts his formations, and openly admits where experience exceeds talent. The honesty earns cooperation faster than threats, while his ego wave makes disobedience under fire feel impossible. Kane also purchases supplies for every soldier, sacrificing personal profit to improve survival across the entire battalion. His leadership begins with preparation, because dramatic speeches cannot replace medicine, armor, and reliable communication. The army reaches Blade Mountain aboard a Lightning Star cruiser capable of surviving Wave King attacks. University forces establish a separate encampment nearby, bringing noble rivalries into an already dangerous expedition. Uriel gathers several vice captains around himself and argues that Kane's rising fame threatens everyone else's future. Most recognize the stupidity of provoking him, yet old alliances and promised benefits keep them close. Jonathan and Cynthia arrive with Hellblazer University, forcing Kane's old life into the military operation. Kane barely reacts, which hurts Jonathan more than anger, because it proves their betrayal no longer matters. Before either side can manufacture a confrontation, tens of thousands of wave beasts begin their first march. Soldiers advance in disciplined formations, while students chase valuable kills and expose gaps in their lines. Kane moves between squads, correcting mistakes, intercepting powerful monsters, and protecting soldiers he barely knows. High above the battlefield, Bloodless No. 4 targets him under secret orders from the mysterious organization. Zarak intercepts the assassin 30,000 meters above the ground, where their clash cannot erase the army below. Red and blue forces split the upper atmosphere, while Kane remains focused on the horde surrounding his battalion. A level 7 Inferno Ape tears through defensive lines and challenges everyone below Wave Champion rank. Kane meets it directly, using Golden Fire, Blood Lightning, and relentless close combat to break its momentum. Each punch carries his entire body rather than only physical strength, turning technique into visible leadership. When the ape falls, Kane raises one arm and makes the surviving soldiers repeat the fort's name. The roar crosses the battlefield, restoring morale and reminding scattered units that they still belong together. His victory also humiliates students who treated military cadets like disposable competition only hours earlier. Kane then proposes selling an efficient cultivation path called New Beginning to ordinary soldiers for almost nothing. The technique spreads because he values a stronger army more than exclusive control over useful knowledge. This decision quietly builds loyalty among people whose names noble commanders rarely bother learning. The next crisis involves a coordinated monster swarm and a hunt leader chosen from competing vice captains. Kane accepts responsibility, then orders everyone to share specialties before the approaching horde reaches striking distance. Uriel questions every command, hoping public failure will stop Kane's rise without requiring an obvious betrayal. A lightning fall mantis disrupts the original formation, forcing Kane to change the plan while already surrounded. He becomes the moving lure, drawing thousands of beasts toward himself while separate battalions attack their flanks. From above, the scene resembles one red figure carving a tunnel through a living avalanche. Kane cannot defeat every creature personally, but his movement gives hundreds of soldiers a controllable battlefield. The maneuver succeeds, and the officers who doubted him must admit he protected both mission and personnel. Competition becomes nastier after the army enters a strange dimension created by Blade Mountain's hidden inheritance. Teams are separated among towering forests, starry spaces, sensory trials, and monsters built from recorded combat knowledge. Kane forms temporary alliances with Orin, Antony, William, and others whose goals overlap without becoming identical. They confront noble students led by Carl, Jortar, Dominic, and men willing to kill soldiers for inheritance rewards. An early 3-against-3 battle ends with Kane burying Carl after using Bloodhand to pierce his defenses. The conflict should have stopped there, but Blade Mountain rewards desperation and removes external consequences. Kane earns a natural holy weapon, a machete formed partly from his own blood and spiritual foundation. He names the weapon Slaughter, because Apex has already accepted that creative titles are not Kane's strength. Slaughter returns to his rebirth heart when dismissed, and moves like another limb when summoned. The inheritance then weakens participants deliberately, leaving Kane vulnerable when defeated rivals choose betrayal. Carl and Jortar attack again, under circumstances where mercy would simply create another hidden ambush. Kane eliminates them and takes their resources before the remaining alliance can argue about noble consequences. Oren adapts quickly, understanding that assassination training does not allow hesitation after an enemy reveals lethal intent. The situation becomes worse when Cynthia appears frightened, running toward Kane as if seeking protection. For one moment, the hallway, Jonathan's betrayal, and the life Kane might have lived return with her face. Then greed replaces fear in her eyes, and a concealed dagger drives toward his chest. Kane survives because the system and his instincts detect the shift before old emotions control his body. The attempted murder erases whatever compassion remained for people exploiting their shared past. Dominic's larger plan collapses, and Kane pursues everyone who helped turn false surrender into an assassination attempt. He orders the soldiers to end the attacking group quickly, then corrects anyone treating cruelty like entertainment. Necessary force is not permission to prolong suffering, even after the enemy has chosen betrayal. The distinction matters because every victory brings Kane closer to the Red King's ruthless emotional emptiness. During the chase, he advances to level 8 beneath the protection of Antony and an enormous ancient tree. The breakthrough raises his physical foundation, while Blade Mountain prepares a second, far more personal trial. Kane enters the severing domain, where every sense disappears until only touch remains available. Darkness removes sight, silence removes hearing, and isolation gradually destroys his awareness of passing time. Apex cannot solve willpower for him, leaving Kane alone against a dimension designed to dissolve identity. He keeps moving Astral Wave through remembered pathways, using pain as evidence that his body still exists. Hours blur into what feels like months before a distant point of light finally appears. Kane reaches it after exhausting everything, earning a foundation called Flawless Marrow and approaching the legendary Void Marrow. Outside the trial, Dominic and Uriel attack again, while temporary allies reveal how cheaply their promises were purchased. Kane's fury erupts into Berserker State, a dangerous wave virus that trades control for immediate output. He kills Uriel during the escape and reaches a black castle before Dominic can finish the pursuit. Inside waits the Sword Avatar, a perfect opponent constructed with Kane's own strength, energy, and available techniques. The duplicate knows his habits without sharing his exhaustion, forcing Kane to fight the limits of his identity. It uses airwalk along the ceiling, compresses sound into projectiles, and develops second gear before Kane understands it. Every copied advantage becomes a lesson because the Avatar reveals what Kane could do with better control. The duel turns into a competition of resolve after both fighters lose enough blood to collapse. Kane refuses the ground, knowing one fall will make standing impossible before the final exchange. He invests everything in one last strike and destroys the Sword Avatar as consciousness begins slipping away. The inheritance lifts his ruined body and completes the marrow transformation he chased through every earlier trial. Flawless Marrow gives Kane a foundation most wave champions never achieve, while Slaughter absorbs new techniques. He leaves the dimension with Sonic Dash, Sonic Armor, Second Gear, and a weapon sharpened by survival. Alexander, a powerful noble, immediately tries to pressure him outside, expecting exhaustion to erase resistance. Zarek arrives with a blue force field and makes the political confrontation physically impossible to ignore. Olivian and other pillars join the standoff, revealing how many factions now consider Kane strategically important. Nobody attacks, because true power often expresses itself through consequences everyone understands without testing. Kane sees their restraint and realizes even Wave Kings remain pieces inside games controlled by higher beings. That realization does not discourage him, it changes the height of the destination he intends to reach. His dual alter ego finally matures enough to support a visualization technique named the Empyrean Sun. One half produces a golden radiance of life, while the other generates a darker radiance of power. Together, they let Kane heal, strengthen his body, and use second gear without destroying himself immediately. His soul force also reaches the Wave Champion boundary, unlocking another absolute lifeform system module. Before exploring it fully, Kane receives a summons from the collapsing Lightning Duke himself. The Duke rules his sector from a throne surrounded by pressure capable of crushing ordinary cultivators. Kane approaches, kneels as a serving officer, and meets the ruler's gaze without surrendering his internal pride. The Duke offers a sky-rising pill capable of helping Kane secure Void Marrow during his next breakthrough. In exchange, Kane must enter Bloodsea and protect its Blood Maiden through 4 dangerous trials. Bloodsea is divided between integrationists, who accept outsiders, and purists obsessed with lineage separation. Sending a human soldier into that political conflict will anger people powerful enough to erase entire cities. Kane accepts because Void Marrow may determine every future limit of his astral cultivation. The newly awakened gluttony module then reveals another absurd ability, converting artifacts into usable cultivation energy. Cain feeds it accumulated equipment, generating Earth Fiend flame and improving resources that no longer serve him. He also creates a Grand Wave virus using genetic knowledge stolen from the Sahara laboratory. The virus replaces his outdated lightning lupus lineage with an Avernus lineage tied to blood and darkness. His strength rises dramatically, shadows answer his movements, and spatial awareness expands across the battlefield. Then, Bloodless No. 1 arrives to escort Cain into the faction, where one mistake can ignite civil war. Bloodless No. 1 does not offer a comfortable vehicle or explain the journey with unnecessary courtesy. He orders Cain to run, then accelerates beyond 200 meters per second across the barren landscape. The trip lasts for hours, measuring endurance before Cain even reaches the territory he must survive. During a brief stop, Bloodless demonstrates advanced levels of the blood refinement art Cain learned incompletely. Blood Flow Fury turns circulation into combat rhythm, empowering fists, knees, elbows, and movement through controlled pressure. Blood Rebirth goes further, rebuilding the cultivator through stages that change the value of every drop inside him. Cain studies each motion with his AI chip, but Bloodless makes clear that data alone cannot replace experience. At the coast, the blood sea stretches beyond the horizon, like an ocean carrying impossible vitality. The liquid is not ordinary water colored red. It is genuine blood, preserved through ancient power. Blood City occupies the shore, while the legendary Blood Pagoda rises from an island far beyond it. Purist guards block Cain's path immediately, disgusted that an outsider expects entry into their sacred territory. Cain displays his military identification and reminds them that obstructing a colonel carries consequences beyond local prejudice. The guards move, but their expressions promise that legal authority will not protect him forever. Inside the pagoda, Wave Kings watch from every level, turning silence into deliberate psychological pressure. Cain walks through their hostility beside Bloodless and refuses to lower his eyes from manufactured comfort. At the top waits the Blood Duke, master of the Blood Sea and leader of the integrationist path. He asks Cain how the vast ocean of blood came into existence, testing judgment rather than historical memory. The answer is tied to an ancient astral blood beast whose sacrifice created the faction's greatest inheritance. The Blood Duke explains that power survived, but its descendants eventually confused inherited purity with moral worth. Purists now oppose outsiders so aggressively that political disagreement has started producing assassination attempts. Cain's assignment is to protect Shura, the Blood Maiden chosen to undergo 4 trials of purity. She enters with long red hair and an expression already sharpened by years of factional pressure. Their first meeting goes badly because Shura resents needing protection from someone her own age. Cain becomes angry when her careless movement creates an opening, mistaking responsibility for personal insult. The Blood Duke separates them and forces both teenagers to recognize that pride is helping their enemies. They do not become friends, but they establish rules clear enough to survive the coming journey. An assassin attacks on Cain's first day, using a saint-level void state technique to bypass ordinary detection. Slaughter is knocked from Cain's hand before he transforms his arms into blood gem weapons and counters. The attacker escapes death only because stronger forces intervene, proving the purists already consider Cain a serious problem. Cain studies the technique afterward, adding its principles to his own assassination path instead of wasting the lesson. His marrow washing reaches 99% while his cultivation advances, shocking even the Blood Duke and Bloodless. The Sky Rising pill is working, but the final fraction separating perfection from failure remains terrifyingly difficult. Shura's trials begin inside the Ice Crown, a frozen region filled with king beasts and environmental catastrophes. 9 blood champions accompany her, including Surin, while hidden assassins follow beneath layers of snow and shadow. Before leaving, Cain creates a wave virus for Shura and offers it without demanding blind trust. She refuses initially, correctly observing that injecting an outsider's creation would be reckless without independent analysis. Cain accepts the decision, and that respect begins repairing the hostility between them. Before departure, the Blood Duke gathers every champion and explains what the 4 trials actually represent. The geysers test physical purity, the Lightning Mountain tests resolve, and Howling Forest tests collective judgment. The final trial remains deliberately undisclosed, preventing candidates from preparing an answer without understanding its purpose. Purist champions listen with expressions suggesting Cain's presence insults the ceremony more than any hidden assassin. Surin keeps his objections private, preferring to judge the outsider through actions rather than inherited factional language. Shura notices the difference, yet her position prevents her from appearing too friendly before the journey begins. Every smile around the Blood Maiden can become evidence used against her leadership within the pagoda. Cain understands political isolation because military fame has similarly transformed ordinary friendships into potential pressure points. He therefore keeps their conversations professional and shares information through secured AI chip channels whenever possible. The virus he designed would reinforce Shura's circulation without replacing the Blood Sea lineage she values. Its purpose matters politically, since purists could describe any foreign lineage as contamination, regardless of actual benefit. Cain leaves the formula available for inspection, allowing Shura's own coders to test every sequence independently. That transparency unsettles opponents who expected either manipulation or an arrogant demand for immediate gratitude. The journey toward Icecrown begins aboard a massive beast capable of crossing hostile territory without landing. Below them, red plains gradually become frozen valleys covered by storms and buried king beast territories. Cain memorizes escape routes, while the Blood Champions discuss which attacks best protect a central formation. Several assume every assassin will target Shura directly, but Cain expects the intelligent ones to isolate defenders first. He assigns overlapping observation zones and quietly checks whether anyone resists commands for suspicious reasons. Raiden questions the strategy aggressively, revealing ambition but no clear evidence of collaboration with their enemies. Cain stores the conflict instead of forcing obedience, because public pressure could push an uncertain ally toward betrayal. At the Icecrown boundary, the cold penetrates ordinary armor and makes every controlled breath release crystalline vapor. The dragon lands near shattered mountains, where territorial beasts have already marked the snow with enormous tracks. Cain identifies multiple level 9 signatures and one sleeping king beast beneath a frozen ridge. The party moves around it, conserving energy rather than chasing resources unrelated to Shura's objective. That decision frustrates champions trained to treat every dangerous creature as a chance for personal advancement. Surin supports Cain, reminding them that an assassin benefits whenever pride delays the group or exposes injuries. Their first resting point contains an abandoned structure built by earlier Blood Maiden candidates generations ago. Names carved into the stone include winners, failures, and people whose final outcomes nobody recorded. Shura touches one faded inscription belonging to a distant relative and briefly lets uncertainty reach her face. Cain does not offer an empty promise that success is guaranteed, because both understand the trials can kill her. He tells her preparation has already made survival more likely than fear currently allows her to recognize. The practical reassurance works better than praise, and Shura enters the first valley with steadier breathing. Assassins observe from ridges while suppressing body heat beneath specialized cloaks designed for the frozen terrain. Apex detects an unnatural gap in falling snow, revealing where one hidden figure disrupts the storm. Cain pretends not to notice and lets the party walk beyond the position before reversing through Void State. Norman believes he is tracking Shura, never realizing another assassin has begun tracking him from behind. The old killer checks the wind, studies footprints, and waits for Cain to return toward the central formation. Slaughter reaches him from a blind angle only after Cain confirms the surrounding mountains hide no partner. Norman understands the technique during the final instant and reacts with admiration instead of meaningless pleading. Cain takes the man's ring, weapons, and communication device before hiding every sign of their encounter. Inside the ring, coded messages confirm separate teams have entered Icecrown under different purist sponsors. The conspiracy is broader than one elder, which means capturing a single assassin would never end the danger. Cain returns while the champions remain unaware he left, proving the first defensive layer works exactly as intended. Shura notices fresh ice on Slaughter's edge, but waits until privacy before asking what happened. He shares Norman's messages and warns that somebody among their political allies may be leaking movement schedules. They decide not to confront the group because fear could make the real informant change methods prematurely. At the geyser field, pillars of boiling water erupt through snow, with enough pressure to shatter stone. The purification pool lies between vents, forcing candidates to endure heat while avoiding unpredictable bursts around them. Shura removes outer armor and enters as blood energy forms a thin defensive layer over her skin. The first contact tears impurities from her meridians and turns controlled breathing into a visible struggle. Blood champions form a perimeter, yet several watch Cain more closely than the mountains they supposedly guard. He deliberately trains blood runes beside the pool, giving observers a reason to underestimate his attention. Apex continues scanning through his lowered gaze, measuring vibrations beneath snow and shifts in distant heartbeats. Two killers approach underground, expecting steam and erupting geysers to conceal their movement from surface detection. Kane waits until both enter a narrow channel before collapsing the ice behind and in front of them. The trapped assassins attack upward, but blood nails meet their weapons inside the tunnel without exposing Shura. Soren hears the struggle and moves to help, arriving just as Kane drags one unconscious attacker into view. The second dies after activating a destructive seal meant to erase memories and identifying marks. Kane hypnotizes the survivor, yet a mental restriction begins burning through the captive's brain before answers emerge. He withdraws rather than destroy the mind completely, obtaining only a symbol connected to the purest elders. Shura completes purification, while the group finally accepts that assassination is not an abstract political possibility. Several champions apologize for treating Kane's precautions like theatrical control, though Rodden remains visibly unconvinced. Kane answers without triumph, because wounded pride inside a formation can become more dangerous than open disagreement. During recovery, he lets the captured communication device send one false report, describing Shura as seriously weakened. The message encourages enemies to accelerate their timetable and approach before stronger reinforcements can become available. Shura studies the modified virus again after feeling how purification exposed weaknesses in her circulation. Her independent analysis confirms Kane preserved her lineage while correcting instability around several blood runes. She accepts the injection privately, refusing to let purists turn medical judgment into another factional performance. The wave virus spreads through her system without conflict, strengthening control rather than producing a dramatic transformation. Kane monitors every reaction and keeps antidotes ready until the final genetic changes stabilize completely. Shura thanks him without ceremony, and their alliance finally begins resembling trust instead of contractual responsibility. The group departs toward Lightning Mountain, while distant assassins interpret the false report as their opening. Storm clouds rotate around the peak, discharging so constantly that the stone glows beneath repeated impacts. Candidates must climb within the storm and let controlled lightning temper blood runes without destroying them. Shura takes the lead because the trial measures her, while Kane remains close enough to intercept abnormalities. The first strikes follow predictable atmospheric patterns, allowing every champion to preserve strength through careful movement. Then, hidden devices activate inside the mountain and begin redirecting lightning toward Shura's exact position. Apex detects metallic resonance beneath the rock, confirming the storm has been altered by deliberate preparation. Kane sends blood nails into the mountain, severing two conductors while another strike forms above them. Destroying the final device would take too long, so he chooses to confront the redirected pillar directly. Astral wave and blood energy compress around his arm until red light becomes painful to observe. The upward blow divides the lightning, sending separate branches into empty cliffs on both sides. Fragments still strike Kane and Shura, burning through defenses while the mountain trembles beneath them. Shura refuses evacuation and uses the remaining current to complete the tempering her trial demands. Her determination prevents the assassination attempt from becoming a reason to repeat the entire mountain later. When they descend, Kane's right arm barely responds, and golden radiance works continuously beneath the damaged skin. The champions finally understand that his protection is not effortless power displayed for political recognition. Every intervention leaves a cost their faction may never publicly admit he paid. That knowledge changes the group's formation before Howling Forest, placing Kane beside Shura without further argument. The third destination is Howling Forest, where gray fog distorts perception and separates people from their own formations. Kane's scan protects him from ordinary confusion, but a new signature appears with power far beyond wave champions. An elderly assassin named Landrick has entered the trial despite being a genuine wave king. Age and injury have weakened him, yet even a declining wave king can level cities when fully unleashed. Kane searches the dead assassin's rings and discovers explosives, identities, and evidence supporting one desperate possibility. He tells Shura and the Blood Champions that fighting Landrick directly will end with all of them dead. The group must create a battlefield where injury, surprise, and concentrated attacks reduce the difference in rank. Kane stages open conflict among the Blood Champions, giving the hidden assassin exactly the division he expects. Radin appears to betray the group, forcing Kane into a convincing fight, while Shura prepares the real trap. Landrick observes from an underground cave, amused that fear has apparently destroyed their unity before his arrival. When the Wave King finally moves, every supposed rival turns and launches the prepared attack together. Explosives rupture the cavern, while Shura compresses her bloodline power into a volcanic claw of crimson energy. The blast burns Landrick severely, but the assassin emerges through smoke with enough strength to kill them all. Surin and the champions form a defensive wall around Shura, expecting Kane to strengthen their formation. Instead, Kane grabs the Blood Maiden, places her on his back, and runs from the cave. The defenders think he has betrayed them until they understand the only objective Landrick cannot ignore. Kane has turned himself into the target and dragged the assassin away from every exhausted champion. He sends a warning to Zarek and Bloodless, but help cannot cross the enormous distance immediately. Landrick follows into Howling Forest, firing compressed air and black tornadoes through mountains of ancient trees. Kane uses every movement technique he possesses, while Shura's presence makes dodging increasingly difficult. An air cannon strikes him directly, breaking defenses that would have protected ordinary wave champions. Golden Radiance repairs enough damage to keep him moving, but his stored energy falls with every heartbeat. Kane leaves Shura at a calculated position and turns back, because endless running only delays the same result. Inside the fog, Apex tracks Landrick's habits, while Kane enters the flow he first sensed at Blade Mountain. His body, instincts, and conscious intent align, allowing him to react before analysis becomes language. Landrick still dominates through rank, yet Kane begins surviving exchanges that should have ended instantly. The Wave King creates a black tornado large enough to erase every remaining route through the forest. Kane prepares to meet it, only to see Shura reappear between him and the incoming attack. She never escaped completely, because leaving the person who protected her contradicts the leader she intends to become. Their combined resistance buys the final seconds needed for Zarek and Bloodless to reach the battlefield. The two powerhouses dismantle Landrick's advantage, while Kane finally allows his ruined body to stop moving. Zarek and Bloodless then use their own forces to complete Kane's marrow washing under ideal conditions. For 25 days, they refine his foundation, while Shura finishes the last trial of purity nearby. Kane awakens with Void Marrow, the strongest known foundation for entering the Wave Champion rank. The achievement should bring rest, but factional politics has already prepared a public trap in Blood City. The Blood Champion Final Tournament is meant to display unity while deciding influence among the younger generation. Purist leaders arrange the bracket so Kane must fight 9 champions before facing Zima, their final prodigy. Jeremy begins by mocking the outsider and assumes Kane's hidden presence means fear. Kane reveals himself through Void State and ends the first match before the crowd fully notices his movement. Jeremy's grandfather protests, expecting rules to change once his descendant becomes the one humiliated. Bloodless reminds everyone that the same laws protected their strategy moments earlier, forcing the complaint into silence. The next fighters receive simple orders: defend, run, and exhaust Kane without risking a fair exchange. Kark wraps himself in blood iron like a human fortress, hoping Kane will waste energy against the shell. Kane identifies structural weaknesses and dismantles the defense instead of proving strength through endless impacts. Another champion circles the arena at full speed, but Kane breaks his ankles and ends the performance. Each victory increases Purist embarrassment because their greatest bloodline heirs refuse direct battle with one outsider. Kane adjusts tempo, changes weapons, and uses only enough power to preserve energy for the opponent waiting last. After 9 consecutive wins, even hostile spectators begin respecting the discipline required to remain standing. Then Zima enters with Red Lightning, a powerful bloodline, and secret preparation from the High Blood Elder. Their ego waves collide before either body moves, filling the arena with red and golden pressure. Zima's will is exceptional, but Kane has faced death, possession, isolation, and a Wave King assassin. The red field pushes forward, making spectators understand that cultivation level cannot measure every form of strength. Both fighters activate transformations and meet in an exchange too fast for ordinary eyes to follow. Kane uses second gear, sonic armor, blood hand, slaughter, and the changing rhythm of blood flow fury. Zima answers with specialized lightning and a body strengthened specifically for the final confrontation. The Purist champion appears overwhelmed until Kane notices the High Blood Elder remaining suspiciously calm. Zima launches a hidden technique that multiplies his speed beyond anything demonstrated during the match. The surprise strike lands near Kane's head, with force capable of ending a Wave champion immediately. Spectators assume the tournament is over, while Zima orders the supposedly defeated outsider to kneel. Golden flames move beneath Kane's injuries, and the boy rises before the celebration can begin. He enters a deeper flow, allowing the body to read Zima's commitment before the attack fully forms. Kane crosses the remaining distance and ends the champion, who chose a lethal surprise after demanding honorable rules. That victory destroys the Purist's final public answer, so the High Blood Elder abandons appearances completely. The Titan attacks the arena with a palm strike meant to erase Kane and everyone close enough to witness. Blood Sea erupts beneath the impact, while even distant powerhouses believe the teenager has finally died. Then, Cain rises from the Crimson Ocean and insults the Elder who announced his death too early. The Red King's power has answered, for a moment, giving Cain enough force to survive without surrendering control. Zarek attacks the High Blood Elder. Bloodless launches the Second Blood Elder skyward, and order disappears instantly. Integrationist and purist Wave Kings clash above cities packed with people unable to escape the collateral damage. The factions' political conflict becomes civil war, with attacks illuminating the sky like repeated nuclear detonations. Cain does not chase the strongest enemy or search for personal revenge amid the chaos. He races toward the Blood Pagoda because millions of civilians are trapped beneath the Wave King battlefield. Shura organizes integrationist defenders, while Cain uses the pagoda's formation to gather everyone into protection. A crimson cocoon closes around Blood City and Blood Island, shielding ordinary lives from the fighting above. Only after securing them does Cain rise into the battlefield and confront Jason, Jeremy's grandfather. Jason has an early Wave King cultivation and expects rank to decide the result against a new champion. Cain's Void Marrow, dual energy pools, flow, and combat techniques make that expectation dangerously outdated. Their clash becomes the first time Cain fights a Wave King head-on without making escape the central objective. He holds the line until the integrationists gain control and the High Blood Elder finally falls. The first collapsing lightning pillar arrives through darkness, revealing how closely the Empire watched the crisis. His presence ends further resistance, because even surviving extremists understand the power now standing above them. The Civil War lasts briefly, but its casualties and political consequences will shape Blood Sea for generations. Afterward, Bloodless proposes severe punishment for every purist family that supported the uprising. Cain sees the practical danger. Children raised beneath collective punishment will inherit hatred instead of understanding. He suggests sending younger purists into the Imperial military force beside people from across the Empire. Shared danger can build loyalty, where speeches and imprisonment only preserve resentment under different language. The Blood Duke sees wisdom in the proposal, but asks whether Cain will ever trust the faction completely. Cain answers honestly that trust cannot be commanded after an attempted public execution and civil war. Cooperation may grow, but forgetting would only make another betrayal easier to arrange. He then visits the imprisoned Jason without chains interfering and closes the unfinished personal threat. The decision is cold, yet Cain refuses to pretend a man who repeatedly ordered murder deserves another opportunity. Alone afterward, he feels the weight beneath that certainty and wonders where justice ends and habit begins. Shura finds him during the century ascendance of the Blood Moon, when the faction's ancient inheritance awakens. The astral blood beast emerges from the sea and evaluates every young champion gathered around its soul force. It strengthens lineages and recognizes potential, but Cain's different bloodline prevents the expected blessing. Inside the system, another ancient presence attempts to use the event and replace Cain through rebirth. A golden guardian near the chained gate intervenes, preserving Cain's identity while allowing useful power to remain. Shura and Cain survive the ceremony, with a connection deeper than the political duty that first joined them. Their private relationship changes, but the story keeps its focus on the trust earned through shared survival. Before leaving, Cain receives access to another priceless technique and promises that Blood Sea has not seen his last return. He departs as a colonel, a wave champion, and a name capable of changing decisions across entire factions. Book 5 begins aboard another vessel, where Zarek teaches Cain about powers standing beside natural laws. Concepts are ideas, sharpened until willpower can impose them directly upon reality and opposing energy. Zarek demonstrates with his river, while Luther answers through an ocean, carrying weight, distance, and relentless pressure. Their friendly clash teaches Cain that a concept is not decoration attached to an attack. It is a personal truth expressed strongly enough that the world temporarily accepts its meaning. Cain's alter ego contains life and power, but his understanding remains too shallow to develop either completely. He therefore begins the biometal Herculean technique, another dangerous method for strengthening his physical foundation. The process replaces ordinary iron within his blood using specially prepared metals melted inside a cauldron. Every stage risks poisoning the body if control slips, but Cain now possesses regeneration capable of supporting it. The cost is enormous, so an encounter with space bandits arrives at an almost convenient moment. Their raiders attack transport routes, while a middle wave king named Crane controls the operation from safety. Cain destroys the first attackers, traces their command, and confronts Crane before the bandit understands his identity. Metal blades merge into a net around Kane, but his physical power tears through the prepared containment. Crane loses without Kane needing the full strength now hidden beneath his colonel's uniform. The obvious response would be execution, yet Kane notices the man's knowledge, political experience, and wood-law potential. He offers Crane another path: become a supervised military assistant or remain a hunted criminal, awaiting someone worse. Crane questions whether Kane possesses the authority, and the colonel produces exactly the legal answer required. The former bandit accepts, partly from survival, and partly because serving a rising monster offers unexpected opportunity. Kane stabilizes Crane's wounds and promises complete recovery only if future loyalty earns that investment. Together, they enter Prometheus Sector, political center of an empire governing populations beyond ordinary comprehension. The imperial court monitors nobles, military forces, trade, and diplomacy across the entire Gaia continent. Kane's reputation arrives before him, and Treasurer Marcus Ignis greets the young colonel as the Kingslayer. Marcus knows of hidden figures manipulating trade and starcruiser attacks, but fear has kept his information fragmented. Kane applies controlled pressure, offering protection while making betrayal or deliberate negligence carry unmistakable consequences. The trail points toward noble territories and the Azure royal family, rulers connected to the powerful Golden Emperor. Before entering their political center, Kane spends a week hunting king beasts across Cicada Forest. The training lets him refine biometal strength, slaughter's techniques, and the new balance of his expanded energy. An Azure delegation finds him there, expecting a common soldier to treat royal attention as a gift. Princess Corinne orders her guards to seize Kane after he refuses the exact ceremony she imagines herself owed. The soldiers recognize his rank and remain motionless, leaving Corinne humiliated before her own companions. She repeats the order and insults him, turning political awkwardness into a direct challenge to military authority. Kane crosses the distance and knocks her down with one controlled strike before the guards can intervene. Her hatred survives the impact, but the encounter finally attracts someone capable of resolving it intelligently. Damien Skyflame arrives riding a powerful beast, carrying royal blood without his sister's careless entitlement. He listens before deciding, confirms Kane's identity, and chooses conversation over a battle neither mission requires. That restraint earns Kane's respect, because strength becomes meaningful when someone can choose not to display it. Corinne introduces herself properly afterward, while Damien invites Kane to travel toward the royal city. Kane initially refuses because Crane already serves as his guide, and dependence can become political ownership. Damien accepts the boundary, and the group eventually continues toward Eden and the magnificent Silver City. The capital contains powers from every major race, noble heirs, hidden agents, and cultivators strong enough to level nations. Kane studies streets and auras rather than architecture, immediately recognizing a den of elegant predators. Klaus, the fourth imperial prince, welcomes him with genuine interest mixed with careful strategic evaluation. Kane keeps their relationship respectful while making clear that cooperation does not equal personal allegiance. Before the imperial feast, he visits a dream master who guides consciousness through symbolic realms. Kane floats over impossible landscapes, witnesses beautiful memories, and enters nightmares designed from concentrated despair. The journey explains why strong souls rarely dream. Their minds already process emotion without unconscious reconstruction. It also gives Kane new language for separating his own fears from the Red King's inherited memories. The imperial feast takes place atop Heaven's Sundering Mountain, looking down upon Silver City like a deliberate reminder. Princes, princesses, allied races, nobles, and elite geniuses gather beneath a ceiling built to imitate the stars. Magnus Hellblazer attends, accompanied by shadows sharp enough to detect every shift in Kane's attention. Aurelia approaches Kane with practiced charm, expecting physical attraction to create a predictable political opening. His lack of interest breaks her rhythm, and Klaus quietly notices how little ordinary manipulation affects him. The Crown Prince raises a ceremonial cup, while every sibling performs unity for observers who know better. Irian, the third Imperial Prince, decides Kane's criminal assistant offers an easier target than Kane himself. He accuses Crane publicly and demands to know why a convicted bandit stands among royal guests. Kane explains his military authority, the supervision arrangement, and Crane's legal status without raising his voice. The answer makes Irian appear uninformed rather than powerful, which damages pride more effectively than any insult. The prince attempts another attack through political implication, but Kane refuses every obvious trap. Then Desmond from the Deus Behemoth race laughs, enters the hall's center, and requests a direct fight. His people value physical strength, making the challenge honest, even if the timing creates political chaos. Cain accepts, bows, and meets the massive dragon-blooded warrior before a circle of fascinated nobles. Their first exchange shakes the hall, as Desmond's body proves far stronger than human proportions suggest. He lands a hidden double strike near Cain's heart, pushing the friendly contest dangerously close to lethal intent. Damien protests, but Cain rises before anyone can turn the moment into diplomatic protection. He activates third gear, combining transformation stages once dangerous enough to destroy his internal organs. Golden fire supports the strain, while Cain's speed and strength suddenly overwhelm Desmond's reinforced body. A counter lifts the warrior from the floor, and a following kick sends him across the prepared arena. Desmond continues smiling through the punishment, because finding a stronger peer matters more than avoiding embarrassment. Cain wins, and gains respect from an allied race that considers elaborate court speeches far less convincing. Jordana Manixet challenges him next, using illusions instead of muscles, and carrying a status equal to royal heirs. Cain refuses another physical fight, but her illusion realm expands before the disagreement can end politely. Dark water closes over him, while invisible currents simulate drowning with terrifying precision. Jordana expects panic, struggling, or at least anger from someone whose lungs believe they are filling. Cain looks through the illusion calmly, remembering real death and pressures no constructed ocean can reproduce. He breaks the realm without attacking Jordana, transforming rivalry into curiosity, and eventually genuine alliance. The feast ends with Irian isolated, Cain newly connected, and multiple factions reconsidering the young colonel's value. Desmond later trades a rare fruit and a blood wings technique, strengthening Cain's aerial mobility. Jordana guides him toward Grandmaster Hortius, an artifact craftsman capable of repairing the broken slaughter. The workshop resembles a stellar pyramid, filled with creations whose prices could bankrupt lesser noble houses. Hortius examines the machete, recognizes its living connection, and agrees to rebuild it beyond its original quality. Cain then travels to the Genetic Coder Association, where intellect carries status independent from combat rank. The headquarters resembles a gigantic cube filled with laboratories surrounding one pillar of concentrated energy. Open rooms display wave viruses, genome maps, and devices capable of rewriting the foundations of living creatures. Cain notices a biogenetic chamber descended from technology originally developed by the Legio Eldritch race. Association coders consider the device dangerous for sentient subjects because one unstable sequence can destroy an entire genome. Cain wants it precisely because Apex can calculate risks those coders must avoid through conservative procedure. Marlon White approaches with formal courtesy and invites Cain to attempt the association's genetic trial. Joining the organization would grant resources, yet it would also expose every unexplained step in Cain's education. Investigators would ask how a military teenager reached saint-level theory without any registered master or laboratory. Explaining Sahara would reveal the organization's experiments, iris, and secrets still connected to powerful hidden enemies. Cain therefore refuses permanent membership, while accepting a test that requires no surrender of military independence. Grandmasters gather around the chamber, expecting useful talent rather than another impossible performance from the famous colonel. The first stage asks participants to inspect multiple genetic formulas and identify errors invisible during ordinary activation. Cain expands genetic sight, while the AI chip models how each alteration will affect later generations of cells. One formula appears familiar because it resembles the Avernus virus he created from Saharo's stolen research. The advanced version proves Avernus did not originate with human scientists or the criminals currently distributing it. Its structure traces toward dark race biology, connecting Cain's artificial lineage to enemies across another continent. That discovery creates a second problem. Someone inside the Empire has been transferring protected knowledge between hostile civilizations. Cain hides his reaction and continues before observing Grandmasters can identify which formula disturbed him. The next trial places a live king beast inside a Tier 0 chamber and opens its genome directly. Participants must produce an improvement without creating instability capable of killing the creature during adaptation. Cain merges Ego Wave with the chamber, seeing genetic relationships as a vast structure rather than isolated sequences. The system predicts consequences, but the number of possible changes expands faster than any simple calculation. He narrows the objective, selecting one ability and protecting every biological system required to support it. Hours pass while Jordana waits outside beside Crane and masters who no longer pretend indifference. Cain finishes successfully, then remains still as new understanding settles through his exhausted soul. The Grandmasters let him recover instead of interrupting, recognizing an enlightenment that could vanish under external pressure. Marlin offers access to a lineage-unlocking trial stored within the Tier 0 biogenetic chamber. He recommends waiting until Cain reaches Grandmaster level, when the same opportunity might reveal a divine formula. Cain calculates the future benefit, then chooses the current attempt because survival cannot invest resources after death. He selects himself as the test subject, shocking coders trained never to combine experimentation and personal ambition. The chamber searches his genome, while the system spends Destiny Force to guide compatible hidden structures forward. Pain spreads through every bone as the artificial Avernus lineage begins shedding incomplete and unstable components. Darkness gathers around the chamber, while blood energy reacts like another creature recognizing its original inheritance. The Grandmasters prepare emergency suppression, but intervention would interrupt changes Cain has deliberately allowed. He continues through the pain until the true Avernus lineage replaces the improvised version completely. Affinity for darkness rises, physical strength increases, and sensory pathways begin processing space with greater precision. Cain uses the second available formula attempt on Crane rather than saving every advantage for himself. Crane enters with a damaged evolution core and the knowledge that failure could remove his remaining cultivation. Cain applies the Life Trend lineage, a regenerative structure suited to woodlaw and long-term recovery. The process becomes excruciating, but Crane remains silent to prevent distraction during the most unstable phase. Green force spreads through his body, repairing channels that years of bandit fighting had made permanently fragile. Crane emerges stronger and closer to complete recovery, giving his loyalty a foundation beyond fear and obligation. Association leaders name Cain an honorary genetic grandmaster, despite his lack of conventional career progression. They ask him to name both formulas, apparently forgetting his history of calling a living weapon slaughter. Cain proudly proposes titles so painfully obvious that several grandmasters must control their facial expressions. Cylon finally records Life Trend and True Avernus, quietly preventing worse names from becoming imperial standards. Yordana's treatment of Cain changes after watching him spend a unique opportunity to repair his subordinate. Interest becomes respect, because Crane received improvement instead of remaining deliberately dependent upon future promises. Cain still keeps emotional distance, aware that Yordana carries a family name with enormous political weight. Their separation remains warm rather than hostile, leaving both free to decide what later meetings should become. 10 days of secluded training follow, while Cain adapts every technique to the true Avernus transformation. The arcane ceremony of nobility then summons him before imperial scholars, royal heirs, and influential witnesses. Public supporters must stake their names on Cain's character before his official route can be evaluated. Klaus steps first, although the tension beneath his smile reveals political concerns behind the generous appearance. Marlon White follows with the association's reputation, making the endorsement more than royal factional theater. Yordana also pledges support, placing the Manixit name behind a soldier many nobles still call unpredictable. The scholars open a path through volcanic terrain and unleash an enormous Aatrox battle puppet. Its 100-meter body swings both fists with force comparable to a small nuclear detonation. Cain uses blood wings to change direction in midair, avoiding the first impact without abandoning forward momentum. The puppet predicts ordinary flight patterns, but Cain folds one wing and drops beneath its second strike. Slaughter cuts through damaged joints, while blood nails enter cracks created by the creature's own movements. Cain kicks a broken section upward, using the puppet's mass as another weapon against its balance. Observers lose sight of him repeatedly, including royal heirs whose cultivation exceeds his current rank. The final attack collapses the battle puppet and sends a shockwave across the mountain beneath the ceremony. Imperial scholars begin arguing over his evaluation, forgetting momentarily that everyone can see their stunned faces. Cain receives extraordinary recognition, while official restrictions again prevent titles matching the measured upper boundary. The ceremony also strengthens his sunseed by confirming values that survived ambition, politics, and public judgment. Desmond congratulates him afterward and offers access to the 3 Towers of Adam through the Crown Prince. The Tower of Stars teaches stellar creation, the Tower of Laws reveals natural order, and Concepts guards ancient wills. Cain chooses the Tower of Stars first because its realm of stellar synthesis can connect multiple cultivation systems. Inside, he experiences matter forming through fusion, as if observing galaxies from outside normal human scale. Stars ignite, compress light elements, and scatter heavier structures through death, collision, and renewal. The vision is not a classroom explanation. Knowledge enters his soul faster than conscious thought can organize. Apex uses energy from the astral blood beast's soul core to stop that pressure from breaking Cain. One day becomes 10, while officials outside wonder whether the tower has trapped or accepted him. Crane approaches Crown Prince Michael and kneels, requesting intervention before the unknown process becomes fatal. Michael prepares to respond when a majestic force descends and reveals the Golden Emperor's attention. Far away, the Void King gathers Dark Kings upon an isolated island avoided by every surrounding beast. The Blood King and Shadow King appear in true bodies, while other rulers attend through dark incarnations. Their master assigns Cain's death to people capable of erasing nations, proving his threat has crossed another boundary. The Blood King proposes exploiting the Azure royal family and Cain's refusal to ignore atrocities against innocents. His plan does not depend on Cain being careless. It depends on predicting which values he will not abandon. Cain emerges after nearly 15 days carrying stellar insight he cannot yet translate completely into techniques. An old expert confronts him outside, but Michael's influence and Crane's intervention prevent the meeting becoming violence. The genetic tournament has been delayed for an entire month because officials refuse to begin without Cain. Dozens of young coders now resent the soldier whose tower visit controlled everyone else's schedule. Cain enters the cube, assesses himself as a one-star saint coder, and declines the obvious leadership position. Demento leads their team, while Severin joins, allowing Cain to observe cooperation instead of dominating every decision. Before the first contest, Cain offers a wager involving the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber he wants. The other novice coders combine family wealth, convinced that numbers make the risk acceptable against one outsider. Their elders reluctantly provide credits, because refusing would admit they expect their prodigies to lose. The opening test measures construction speed without sacrificing the stability required for later genetic chains. Cain's hands barely move, yet the chamber responds as his ego wave arranges components through direct control. Competitors finish respectable vectors and discover Cain has completed a structure several stages beyond theirs. Salon announces the first result, while royal spectators recalculate how expensive their wager may become. The second contest presents numerous flawed sequences and rewards every dangerous defect correctly identified. Most competitors find 15, an impressive score under the pressure and limited examination time. Cain identifies far more because genetic sight follows how each defect multiplies after activation rather than remaining static. The difference makes competition between novices appear almost unfair, yet every participant demanded the same rules. For the team stage, Cain, Demento, and Severin merge ego waves to create a temporary telepathic workspace. They assemble a vector first, distributing tasks according to skill instead of rank or political affiliation. Demento controls structure, Severin checks compatibility, and Cain models mutations before the chain enters construction. Molecule by molecule, the genetic chain grows like a puzzle containing trillions of pieces without a reference image. One microscopic incompatibility could produce useless adaptation, permanent deformity, or death during activation. Cain quietly scans rival chambers, collecting data from formulas unavailable through legal markets or military archives. He does not sabotage anyone, but the invisible analysis expands the genetic coder module's future library. Their first collaborative virus places near the top, yet Cain notices another team producing results suspiciously polished. Instinct suggests hidden interference, but he refuses accusations unsupported by evidence the association can verify. The final trial carries the highest stakes because it concerns soldiers rather than laboratory measurements. Teams must create a battle survival enhancer capable of preserving warriors during catastrophic battlefield injuries. Failure will eventually cost real lives, making dramatic output less important than reliable biological support. Cain channels stellar insight into energy efficiency, while Demento builds delivery and Severin protects genomic stability. Their virus improves survival beyond every competing formula without exhausting the subject after one emergency activation. Cheers erupt around Klaus when the 4th Prince's team defeats factions backed by older royal siblings. Cain takes his biogenetic chamber, military credits, and a rare gold soul crystal as additional recognition. The crystal can ignite astral wave, burn impurities, and improve both quality and quantity under controlled absorption. Accepting it creates political expectations, but Cain takes the resource with full awareness rather than false innocence. He leaves recognized as a genetic coder whose decisions can change armies without throwing a single punch. Afterward, he returns to physical training and reaches the 3rd level of the biometal Herculean technique. Slaughter returns with sharpened functions, accompanied by blood nails controlled through ego wave like airborne daggers. Kane tests the weapons against a late king beast called the living volcano. The creature covers itself in molten stone, forcing him to attack structure rather than simply drain blood. His developing sundering concept separates what should remain connected, giving Slaughter an edge capable of bypassing defenses. The final strike kills the beast and confirms Kane can threaten opponents whose rank once made resistance impossible. That achievement supports his walk to heaven, a formal imperial evaluation of merit, strength, and future potential. Powerful families publicly pledge support, including Jordana, while officials record a feat near vice duke status. His age and current military rank prevent the title, but the official limitation sounds increasingly temporary. Then Crane brings evidence of an intercontinental teleportation formation hidden inside the Azure royal family's territory. Such formations are strictly controlled, extraordinarily expensive, and impossible to justify as a private family convenience. Kane returns to the Azure state and captures Osius Azure, a noble connected to disappearances and buried abuses. Using saint-level hypnosis, he turns Osius into a doorway through the family's security rather than a simple prisoner. Crane hides within a wooden cocoon carried under Osius's control, while Kane suppresses every detectable sign. They enter Azure Castle and target Timothy, an old official guarding routes toward the clandestine dungeon. Kane uses a gold soul crystal as bait, offering enough value to overwhelm Timothy's caution without appearing impossible. The old man demands even more treasure, proving greed can open doors that force would place under alarm. Osius performs irritation exactly as Kane instructed, making Timothy believe the royal noble feels insulted rather than nervous. The disguise works because corruption has taught both men to interpret greed as more believable than loyalty. Timothy disables outer surveillance and calls selected guards away under the excuse of a private transaction. Kane monitors every signal through the AI chip, confirming which systems truly deactivate and which only appear dormant. One hidden sensor remains linked to the family archives, so Crane extends a route through Osius's cocoon. The route enters a wall seam and blocks the device physically without creating an energy fluctuation. Timothy never notices, already imagining how 10 gold soul crystals will change his stalled cultivation. Their route descends beneath public dungeons used for criminals, debtors, and enemies the family acknowledges openly. Below those cells lies another facility, excluded from every official blueprint stored within Imperial records. The air changes first, carrying antiseptic chemicals beneath the smell of metal and old confinement. Osius's memories react to the corridor, producing fear strong enough to threaten Kane's hypnotic control. Kane reinforces the command gently, avoiding damage that would make Timothy suspect a second consciousness. They pass rooms containing discarded equipment too advanced for ordinary noble punishment or interrogation. Child-sized restraints appear beside biogenetic chambers built without emergency release mechanisms. Crane senses Kane's rage through their connection and reminds him silently that discovery still requires patience. The warning works because order allows emotion to inform purpose without choosing the next movement automatically. Timothy reaches the Gold Soul authentication gate and places Osius's hand against a bloodline reader. The formation checks royal genetics, current energy patterns, and several memories difficult for impersonators to reproduce. Kane lets Osius answer every layer while remaining compressed behind the noble's own conscious surface. Blue light opens the gate and reveals a shaft descending farther than the castle's visible mountain foundation. An elevator platform drops them through darkness while Timothy explains security with the confidence of ownership. He mentions that only selected elders know the complete route, unintentionally confirming the conspiracy reaches family leadership. At the bottom, 4 wave kings wait where the promised private exchange was supposedly meant to occur. Timothy smiles differently, revealing that greed never prevented him from preparing betrayal around the valuable crystals. Farius, strongest among the guards, demands Osius surrender the treasure before discussing any payment or favor. Kane realizes the trap does not expose his presence. Timothy simply planned to rob another corrupt relative. That misunderstanding preserves surprise, so he delays until all 4 enemies move within Crane's effective range. Osius complains, retreats, and lets fear make his behavior match the weak noble everyone expects. The nearest Wave King reaches forward, while another seals the elevator and blocks communication to the upper castle. Kane destroys Osius at the instant contact would reveal the hidden bodies within his biological disguise. Blood and shadow separate as the Scarlet Force unfolds from someone the guards believed completely harmless. Crane's cocoon bursts simultaneously, filling the chamber with roots before the Wave Kings can establish domains. Kane's first punch lands above Farius's evolution core, disrupting circulation without wasting time against external armor. The second enemy attacks with water blades, but blood nails redirect them into Timothy's defensive formation. Timothy panics and reaches for the alarm, while Crane's branch pierces the console beneath his hand. Zalan charges through the roots, discovering their flexibility hides strength capable of absorbing direct king-level impacts. Cain appears beside him through shadow, grips his neck, and introduces Ego Wave through overwhelming physical contact. Terror makes Zalan susceptible enough for hypnosis, turning one defender into the key for opening deeper doors. Farius resists control, so Cain cripples his energy pool instead of risking a mental backlash before the mission ends. The remaining guards lose coordination when their leader falls, allowing Crane to bind them against opposite walls. Timothy watches the attackers spare useful enemies and realizes they came for information rather than simple revenge. That understanding frightens him more, because every hidden transaction suddenly becomes something his captors can extract. Cain orders hypnotized Zalan to authenticate the next passage, while Crane carries Farius under layered wooden restraints. The corridor beyond contains records organized by genetic compatibility instead of names, dates, or legal charges. People have been reduced to sequences, describing which royal experiment might use them most efficiently. Cain opens one cell and finds survivors unable to remember families after repeated mental conditioning. Apex detects implanted restrictions, similar to the one that destroyed the assassin beneath Icecrown. Removing them carelessly would kill the prisoners, forcing Cain to leave people inside while continuing forward. He marks every cell through the AI chip and promises himself that escape will include them later. Crane finds storage rooms packed with failed wave viruses, labeled according to symptoms rather than intended improvements. One archive mentions shipments through an intercontinental gate and recipients identified only by dark race symbols. Another file connects the Azure experiments to disappearances Marcus reported near Imperial trade routes. The same hidden network has been feeding bodies, knowledge, and resources across political borders for years. Cain no longer wonders whether the family deserves exposure. He wonders how many rulers already purchased silence. At the central vault, a pillar contains transaction records protected by encryption beyond ordinary military systems. Apex enters slowly, imitating authorized maintenance requests instead of forcing a breach that would trigger alarms. While the system works, Cain questions Zalan and Timothy separately, comparing answers for inconsistencies. Both describe a child called the Azure Seed, but neither knows the complete mechanism behind the project. Researchers combined unstable royal bloodlines until one subject began absorbing external energy without natural limits. The child could theoretically become a perfect weapon, or collapse into an uncontrolled reaction, consuming the state. Family leaders continued anyway, because successful control might elevate their declining influence above rival royal branches. Crane asks why the project remains beneath their own capital if failure threatens everyone they rule. Timothy answers that leaders never believed failure would occur, while their best formations remained active. That arrogance explains the castle better than any technical record. Risk always belonged to people living below them. Before Cain can release the prisoners, Apex detects catastrophic energy gathering far above their underground position. One experiment has already created something capable of erasing the entire Azure state if containment fails. An alarm echoes through the castle at the exact moment Cain believes he has avoided detection. He and Crane escape the dungeon into a sky filled by a chaotic sphere of compressed energy. The sphere's pulses shatter buildings, while royal soldiers realize their own defenses cannot stop the next expansion. Crane raises a wall of living wood to protect survivors as Cain flies directly toward the phenomenon. Apex identifies a hollow core whose destruction should disperse the gathered energy and save everyone below. Cain reaches the center, prepares slaughter, and then hears a child crying inside the light. The core is a mutated boy, folded into himself, terrified and barely recognizable after repeated experimentation. Destroying him saves the state. Rescuing him leaves millions exposed to the next uncontrolled pulse. Cain asks Apex for another target, but every calculation returns to the child as the central component. This is the impossible choice his enemies prepared: become a killer or allow a nation to die. Cain refuses both conclusions and reaches for power beyond the limits currently protecting his body. He extends Ego Wave into the sphere and searches for a pattern connecting the child to its rotating layers. Every energy stream enters through mutated organs before returning stronger, making the victim both core and unwilling regulator. Severing one connection simply redirects pressure through another part of the boy's failing body. Apex models thousands of sequences, but each safe extraction requires more time than the next pulse allows. Crane's wooden wall begins cracking below as soldiers and civilians gather behind its shrinking protection. Cain feels their fear through Ego Wave, without knowing any individual face or name among them. The child opens one damaged eye and apologizes, believing the disaster is punishment for failing his creators. That apology removes Kane's final ability to treat the core like an object inside an equation. He places slaughter away and reaches forward with radiance of life instead of preparing the killing strike. Golden energy enters the boy, stabilizing several organs while increasing the sphere's hunger for external power. The reaction accelerates rotation, and another shockwave forms before Crane's previous wall has recovered. Kane spreads blood wings around the core like a shield, taking the first pressure across their reinforced surface. His bones shake beneath the impact, yet the child experiences several seconds without new pain. Apex warns that repeating this defense will empty both astral wave and blood energy before rescue becomes possible. Kane asks whether the sphere can consume an artificial replacement carrying the same genetic signature. The system confirms the theory, but estimates construction time in hours rather than rapidly disappearing seconds. He sends every collected Azure record into the AI. Chip orders automatic design without waiting for certainty. Below them, Farius escapes one weakened restraint and attacks Crane while the former bandit maintains civilian defenses. Crane cannot drop the wall, so he lets the Wave King drive a blade through his shoulder. Roots close around the attacker's arm, using Crane's own wound as bait for a counterattack. The former bandit breaks Farius's leg and throws him beyond the wall without releasing the protective formation. Kane notices through Ego Wave and understands that Crane has chosen duty without needing another threat or promise. That trust gives him one less battlefield to control as the sphere prepares its largest expansion. He begins compressing Ego Wave against astral energy, recalling the stellar synthesis observed inside Adam's tower. Energy can become matter under sufficient structure, while matter can release energy when those structures collapse. Kane cannot build the required replacement yet, but the same principle may create temporary physical restraint. His red force field pushes inward, meeting chaotic energy that tears thought apart with every contact. The alter ego appears behind him as a sun divided between life-giving gold and destructive darkness. Both halves rotate together, imposing Kane's chosen order upon a phenomenon created without any restraint. The sphere slows for one heartbeat, then releases pressure powerful enough to shatter his blood wings completely. Fragments of red energy scatter over the state, while Kane remains beside the child with exposed arms. His temporary restraint worked, proving the path exists even though his current power cannot sustain it. Kane gathers everything again, preparing to turn willpower into the material structure his calculation requires. That is when Azure Lightning gathers above the clouds under the command of the returning family ruler. The Azure King arrives and fires a pillar of lightning powerful enough to erase the entire phenomenon. Kane places himself between the attack and the child, taking the force through an expanding alter ego. Astral Wave and Ego Wave fuse outside his skin, forming enormous dark purple muscles around his body. Willpower becomes matter, creating a giant humanoid form capable of surviving power from divine ascension. The Azure King attacks again, viewing one child's death as irrelevant beside the family's political survival. Kane punches through law-woven restraints and strikes a cultivator whose rank should make him completely untouchable. Their battle crosses the state as mountains split and lightning carves scars through the horizon. The Azure King's laws still dominate technique, but Kane's transformed body carries physical force approaching true titans. Flow evolves during the fight, letting Kane predict movement through intention rather than visible action. He breaks ribs, collapses a lung, and tears away an arm before the ruler accepts how real the threat has become. Then another enemy appears, the Blood King, one of the organization's 10 mysterious rulers. He is the same force connected to Saharo, bloodless assassins, and the earlier attack upon Bloodsea. The Void King has ordered Kane's death, and the Blood King prepared specifically to counter the flow. His movements contain false intentions, delayed commitments, and layered attacks designed to poison prediction itself. Kane adapts, but the Azure King returns to his state, while the stronger enemy holds him away. A flash illuminates the distance, followed by an explosion that wipes out everyone Kane just fought to protect. The Azure King chooses destruction over exposure, erasing victims, witnesses, and evidence beneath one final attack. Kane feels every life vanish through his extended ego wave, and something inside his soul tears open. Rage widens the crack in the chained gate, allowing the Red King's destructive nature to flood forward. His power rises again, and the Blood King realizes the opponent is approaching a true Titan's level. They collide with enough force to damage the surrounding physical plane, yet Kane's mind begins losing ownership. Apex watches the ancient presence spread and understands that victory may leave nobody named Cain behind. The system's spirit reaches him through the chaos and offers a different path. Embrace order. Order does not mean obedience to kings, institutions, or people claiming moral authority over weaker lives. It means control over self, decisions aligned with purpose, and power that remains a tool rather than master. Cain accepts the idea, stopping the Red King's will from replacing him even while using its available strength. The clarity changes every movement, turning furious attacks into precise actions chosen without emotional noise. The Blood King traps him inside a black box designed to isolate energy, matter, and escape routes. Cain asks Apex for probabilities, studies the single unstable boundary, and breaks through before containment fully settles. He returns to the ruined Azure State, enters the clandestine prison, and reaches the surviving formation. Inside waits an intercontinental gate, large enough to explain why the royal family risked every imperial law. Cain activates it while enemies close around the remaining evidence, choosing exile over certain capture. The formation tears him from Gaia and throws his damaged body across the world toward Kronos continent. The bullied student, military prodigy, and Blood Sea champion disappears inside the skin of an enemy race. What emerges from that journey will no longer call itself only Cain Lorifer. Back in Gaia, the collapsing Lightning Duke and Luther witness the storm left by Cain's ego tribulation. 9 cycles of 9 destructive waves attempt to tear identity, memory, and willpower from the missing teenager. The multicolored fire contracts around the mountain, reaching the most dangerous stage as Cain vanishes beyond detection. Shura advances toward the Wave King realm elsewhere, unaware that the person she trusts crossed an entire ocean. Jonathan Aegon receives new orders from his patriarch and prepares to rise through the vacuum Cain apparently left. None of them knows that the intercontinental formation delivered Cain into the body of an injured Aatrox named Kyne. Hours earlier, the Aatrox youth Cain ran through a forest, missing an arm and bleeding from multiple wounds. Members of the Inferno Demon clan hunted him toward a mountain prepared as the final stage of betrayal. Cain reached the cavern, expecting temporary shelter, only to find the trap already waiting inside. The teleportation event intersected his collapsing life, giving Cain's soul a body capable of surviving Kronos. The consciousness controlling Cain opens glowing eyes and introduces itself as the Scarlet King. That new title separates Cain's controlled purpose from the Red King's old hunger for unrestricted destruction. 3 Inferno demons freeze beneath his hypnosis, their bodies obeying while their minds understand the danger perfectly. The Scarlet King questions Zarius and the others, learning that Cain's own people arranged the assassination. He commands one captive to gather resources, another to guard, and the last to provide blood. Zarius fills a stone basin with every treasure collected across his life, then sacrifices vitality into it. The Scarlet King heals inside the mixture, while analyzing Cain's genome and the Aatrox body he now occupies. Kronos lies across the endless ocean, making a return to Gaia impossible without divine ascension or another formation. Rather than waste energy mourning distance, he decides to build strength through the resources now surrounding him. Kyne possessed an evolution core, allowing the Scarlet King to cultivate essence while retaining Cain's astral path. Most experts consider dual cultivation inefficient because each route demands resources capable of consuming entire fortunes. The Absolute Life Form system and Gluttony module change that calculation by converting enemies into accelerated progress. Using a biogenetic chamber, he copies Cain's genome and integrates the identity needed to pass Aatrox inspection. He then studies the Sonic Blade fusion technique, which can support both astral and essence development. The essence evolution path changes fundamentally after Wave Warrior, relying on laws and an externalized power structure. Cain's Law of Blood responds immediately, turning released blood into blades before drawing it safely back. The captives watch in despair because such control proves the monster inhabiting Cain has already surpassed them conceptually. Zirin, another Abyssal Wave King, approaches after sensing disturbances and assumes the injured youth remains easy prey. The Scarlet King lures him through the forest, using sonic bursts and misleading movement to study essence combat. Zirin transforms into a tornado and follows aggressively, never noticing how the route isolates him from support. Slaughter releases hundreds of compressed arcs, breaking the storm, while the Scarlet King attacks its unstable center. The victory confirms that his new essence cultivation lacks astral brute force, but offers extraordinary versatility. Zarius and Orphan lose hope after watching someone below their apparent rank dismantle multiple Wave Kings. The Scarlet King ends their usefulness quickly, extracting answers before taking energy, blood, and remaining equipment. Then he notices an old man drinking tea inside the dangerous forest without appearing in ego wave detection. The stranger speaks like someone watching several personalities share one soul and understands more than he should. He explains that one soul can walk multiple paths, just as one mind can contain different identities. Even the system cannot properly analyze the tea or the mysterious master offering it. The Scarlet King drinks carefully, receives a subtle improvement, and files the encounter as a future danger. On the road toward Evernight City, Inferno Demon agents attempt to complete the assassination through backup plans. The Scarlet King makes himself visible deliberately, ensuring too many witnesses exist for a silent disappearance. When guards question Kine, he records every attacker by name instead of inventing a convenient story about beasts. Marshal Demos warns that accusations against Inferno demons will create consequences across the diplomatic mission. The Scarlet King repeats them anyway, because public truth is now more protective than private caution. Evernight City surprises him before any political meeting begins. Human teachers described Aatrox society as a civilization of sadistic monsters defined entirely by cruelty. Evernight's outer districts contain markets built around biological armor, essence tools, and food adapted to Aatrox physiology. Some citizens wear blade-covered shells, while others display smooth skin and features nearly indistinguishable from humans. Children chase each other between stalls without caring which clan controls the towers above their neighborhood. Workers complain about prices, merchants exaggerate quality, and exhausted guards wait impatiently for their shifts to end. The ordinary details disturb Kane more than open brutality because they contradict years of military certainty. If every Aatrox were naturally monstrous, hatred would require no judgment, and extermination would become emotionally convenient. Reality demands separating hostile armies, criminal cultures, political leaders, and people who merely share their appearance. The Scarlet King remembers crimson civilians reduced to propaganda before the Great Star Kingdom destroyed their home. He refuses to repeat that pattern simply because humanity now occupies the side controlling the lesson books. Marshal Demos watches Kane observe the streets and assumes the injured youth is overwhelmed by returning home. Kane uses that interpretation, asking simple questions whose answers reveal local laws, clan influence, and security structure. Evernight belongs to the Aatrox Capital Administration, yet foreign Inferno Demon envoys operate through diplomatic privilege. That arrangement creates overlapping authority, allowing assassins to hide crimes between jurisdictions that distrust one another. Demos escorts Kane through a routine medical scan intended to detect possession, disguise, and unstable biological armor. The copied genome passes bloodline inspection, while Order keeps Kane's soul fluctuations beneath the formation's sensitivity. One examiner notices unusually dense willpower and calls it a response to surviving months outside safe territory. Kane accepts the explanation, knowing suspicion often disappears when another person supplies a flattering conclusion. At the Marshal's office, every statement concerning Xarius, Orphan, and the Inferno attackers enters an official record. Demos offers several opportunities to replace their names with unidentified beasts or bandits from Silent Forest. The Scarlet King understands the kindness hidden inside that suggestion, but accepting would surrender his greatest protection. Named accusations force enemies to manage public consequences, while an unknown disappearance would remain administratively simple. He describes the attack, the missing months, and intervention by a mysterious Saint Hypnosis master called Scarlet. The invented master explains Kane's transformation without revealing that student and teacher occupy the same body. Demos recognizes how a saint hypnotist could rebuild confidence, unlock talent, and control surviving witnesses completely. He forwards the report upward, ensuring Infernal leaders learn Kane returned with dangerous backing they cannot measure. At the Envoy residence, older relatives greet Kane with embraces carefully positioned for hidden genetic and energy scans. The system identifies every attempt, letting Kane reproduce expected reactions without blocking them too obviously. Jamil asks about Kane's missing arm, recovery, and sudden cultivation, while pretending concern outweighs political calculation. Kane credits Scarlet's treatment and claims the master removed hidden limitations left by earlier injuries. That answer creates envy among cousins, who dismissed Kane as useless before arranging his dangerous assignment. One relative suggests meeting the generous master, hoping access might be more valuable than finishing the assassination. Kane explains that Scarlet appears by choice and treats attempts to follow him as personal hostility. Fear closes the subject, because nobody wants an unknown saint hypnotist examining their thoughts for bad intentions. Dinner begins with compliments about Kane's survival, each sentence hiding questions about inheritance and envoy leadership. Jamil praises his courage, while implying prolonged absence weakened the family's position inside Aatrox negotiations. Another cousin asks whether trauma has affected memory, probing for gaps that could reveal an imposter. Kane answers with details taken from Kane's neural patterns, including childhood events nobody outside the family should know. The memories feel borrowed rather than lived, but order prevents that distance from changing his expression. He identifies Orphan's supporters around the table by tiny reactions whenever the dead Wave King's name appears. Several show genuine grief, others fear exposure, and one younger envoy displays relief impossible to hide completely. Kane stores every response for later, instead of turning dinner into a confrontation without strategic benefit. When Jamil proposes celebrating together at the gala, Kane accepts because public spaces offer witnesses and additional information. He leaves early after making clear recovery remains incomplete, preserving time for actual cultivation and system analysis. Together, the markets, families, workers, and children reveal ordinary lives continuing beneath Evernight's vast dark architecture. The race still contains brutal cultures and dangerous clans, but propaganda erased every inconvenient distinction. That discovery does not make him careless, it makes the enemy category far less comfortable. At the Inferno Demon residence, Kine's supposed relatives gather for dinner and demand explanations for his absence. Jamil performs concern, while others exchange insults disguised as noble politeness and measure every possible weakness. The Scarlet King identifies faces from Orphan's information, answers enough to preserve cover, and leaves without playing along. His increased soul force unlocks the enhancement module, one of the system's most extraordinary abilities. The module harnesses tribulation energy to improve artifacts, techniques, cultivation structures, and eventually living beings. Its refinement strength is measured through revolution flames, with higher numbers demanding exponentially greater control. Destiny Force can improve success, but even the system warns that advanced refinement can destroy its target. The AI chip also evolves with Kane's Wave King Soul Force, gaining pseudo-atomic analysis and deeper prediction. Genetic enhancement improves the Kane body's bloodline, raising darkness, shadow affinity, and essence circulation. Kane enters the dream world again and discovers landscapes different from ordinary psychological dreams. A rainbow sky covers endless forest until a crimson shout freezes and shatters the constructed environment. The system suspects a genuine dream dimension where powerful beings can interact beyond ordinary distance. Kane leaves without resolving the mystery, adding another hidden world to the list of forces surrounding him. At a formal Aatrox gala, the Scarlet King meets Astrid, a young woman born without usable cultivation energy. Her disability makes others treat her as decorative, despite her extraordinary intelligence as an enhancer. Jamil approaches Kane with rehearsed enthusiasm, while members of the Hell Clan search for social pressure points. Seymour challenges him through Ego Wave, expecting the human mind behind Kane's face to retreat publicly. Their force fields collide, and the Scarlet King lets Seymour believe the confrontation remains controlled. One flash of red creates an illusion where a blade removes Seymour's head before his body reaches the floor. The experience lasts seconds, but feels completely real, leaving the proud challenger crawling and holding his neck. No physical injury appears, yet everyone understands that Kane could have chosen a less merciful version. Afterward, he speaks with Astrid and recognizes that her observations of Revolution flames exceed trained cultivators. She possesses a golden book filled with enhancement principles, but lacks the energy required to test them. Kane offers to let her analyze a 9 Revolution flame in exchange for studying the book. Astrid hesitates because the inheritance is precious, then accepts after recognizing a chance unavailable anywhere else. During the journey toward her home, both forget social distance while arguing through formulas and conversion ratios. Astrid uses instruments because she has no ego wave, while Kane provides energy, analysis, and practical experimentation. He leaves the 9 Revolution flame with her after the exchange, surprising someone accustomed to being exploited. The partnership remains cautious, but it becomes the first genuine connection Kane forms on the enemy continent. While Astrid studies, the Scarlet King follows information toward a hidden criminal meeting inside Silent Forest. Old River leads one group, Red Hawk represents another, and armed guards expect a profitable exchange. Kane enters wearing a red mask, walks between both factions, and creates a throne at the table's end. Nobody invited him, so every criminal assumes confidence is hiding either madness or overwhelming support. He announces that no one may leave because he wants their starry gems and their future service. Red Hawk attacks first, allowing the Scarlet King to establish the power difference without prolonged negotiation. Hypnosis turns coordinated resistance into confusion, while blood nails and sonic attacks destroy the mountain around them. Cain heals Red Hawk afterward, proving obedience can offer benefits, while further defiance offers only predictable pain. Old River, Blue Crow, Spectre, Ghoul, and the others submit after understanding no existing alliance can protect them. The Scarlet King implants safeguards, takes their warehouse, and begins transforming the criminals into a hidden faction. He does not demand speeches about loyalty, because experienced criminals can imitate devotion before leaving the room. Instead, Cain asks each leader to explain income, enemies, contacts, and the crimes supporting current operations. Old River controls transport routes and information brokers, but avoids trafficking that creates unnecessary attention. Blue Crow specializes in surveillance, using minor criminals positioned inside markets, ports, and guard supply chains. Red Hawk manages enforcement and has lost an arm during a failed challenge against a stronger underworld faction. Spectre and Ghoul belong to compatible Aatrox bloodlines, making them effective together, but politically dependent on patrons. Their previous master kept all five separated, ensuring nobody gained enough knowledge to replace central leadership. Cain reverses that arrangement by sharing limited operational information while making responsibilities visible to everyone. Competition remains useful, but hidden sabotage would waste resources he has already decided belong to Dark Hand. He orders Blue Crow to map every official investigating Cain's return and every unofficial watcher near Astrid. Old River must trace starry gems, biochambers, and enhancement materials without purchasing enough to expose a pattern. Spectre and Ghoul receive the Inferno demon names from Orphan, along with instructions to verify each connection independently. Red Hawk expects only punishment after attacking Cain, but the Scarlet King examines his missing arm instead. At higher cultivation ranks, regrowing a limb requires resources whose value can exceed an entire criminal organization. Cain combines blood law, radiance of life, and genetic analysis to produce a cheaper but still dangerous reconstruction. Red energy shapes temporary vessels, while golden force encourages flesh to grow along the system's biological model. The process feels like the lost limb is being destroyed again before nerves reconnect with new muscle. Red Hawk refuses to scream in front of rivals until Cain reminds him endurance matters more than performance. Hours later, a functional arm replaces the injury that supposedly ended every possibility of future advancement. Fear remains in Red Hawk's eyes, but gratitude adds something hypnosis alone could never manufacture. The other leaders immediately understand that service may improve conditions their former patrons deliberately left unresolved. Cain makes the terms explicit. Useful work earns investment, betrayal earns removal, and personal worship earns nothing. He then enters the warehouse and finds years of stolen artifacts stored without understanding their greater potential. Starry gems contain techniques, biological materials support coding, and damaged tools become fuel for gluttony. The previous criminals saw merchandise. Cain sees a compressed cultivation infrastructure waiting for organization. Apex catalogs everything, while Old River watches the masked teenager value objects veteran appraisers ignored. Cain consumes useless artifacts through the Devourer dimension and redirects their energy into essence cultivation. He preserves rare items exceeding the module's safe limits because forcing them inside could collapse Gluttony's internal space. Several techniques reveal Aatrox approaches to blood energy that differ from Cain's blood refinement foundation. Blood Flame offers the cleanest compatibility, generating blood-based energy directly within an essence cultivator's evolution core. The technique lacks body tempering, but Cain's astral path already supplies a stronger physical foundation elsewhere. He begins with one spark and feeds it blood essence taken from king beasts hunted outside the mountain. Each circulation changes how slaughter and blood nails interact with essence wave, opening combinations impossible on Gaia. Cain tests a concentrated beam against an empty mountain range and erases the central ridge completely. The criminals feel the impact through their hidden base and reconsider whether escape was ever physically possible. Once experiments finish, Cain applies hypnosis safeguards individually instead of flooding every mind with identical commands. Old River's age gives him the strongest resistance, so Cain uses voluntary focus rather than brute mental pressure. Blue Crow tries hiding one escape contingency and discovers Apex already traced the encrypted communication device. Cain removes the plan without punishment, explaining that preparation for failure is sensible until it becomes active betrayal. That measured response frightens Blue Crow differently because unpredictably cruel rulers are much easier to manipulate. Spectre asks what Dark Hand will actually become after taking control of its current criminal territory. Cain answers that information comes first, resources second, and open expansion only after enemies reveal themselves. He has no interest in ruling street corners while titans and gods move entire races across hidden boards. Dark Hand will become the network that notices those movements before they reach the Scarlet King's body. The first reports arrive within days, confirming Inferno envoys are investigating Scarlet and watching Kane's apparent recovery. Other messages identify Astrid as a possible target because her enhancement research suddenly accelerated after meeting him. Kane increases hidden protection around her home without placing guards close enough to make Astrid feel imprisoned. He also orders the criminals to stop several predatory operations that would create witnesses and future rebellion. Old River questions the lost income, so Kane replaces it through monster materials and refined artifacts from his hunts. The change proves Dark Hand can become richer without depending on crimes that make every civilian an enemy. With operations stabilized, Kane turns the hidden mountain into a laboratory for the enhancement module. Under its new name, Dark Hand, the organization will operate where official Aatrox politics cannot be trusted. His first experiments focus on recovering blood energy through an essence-compatible technique called blood flame. The small scarlet fire inside his evolution core lets Aatrox cultivation imitate resources once tied to Kane's body. With it, 33 blood nails move through the air while a demonic phantom forms from darkness and blood. Kane tests these powers against a skull sky bear, whose bone armor resists ordinary king-level attacks. The creature charges through the forest, but phantom claws hold its body while blood nails attack, changing angles. Kane kills the beast, drains useful essence, and uses the corpse to measure future enhancement effects. He captures several different wave beasts and commands one to enter a refinement cauldron. A 4-revolution flame circulates around the creature, improving it enough to confirm the module works on life. Higher refinements require better theory, so Kane returns to Astrid and shares the results honestly. Together they move from 4 to 6 and 7 revolution by correcting saturation before ignition. Astrid treats every flame like a mathematical structure rather than a mystical reward granted through talent. She records density, color variation, conversion loss, and the exact moment unstable layers begin separating. Kane supplies pseudo-atomic scans, letting her compare theoretical ratios against movement inside the flame itself. Their first 6-revolution attempt burns too quickly and consumes the test artifact before improvement can stabilize. The second remains intact, but distributes energy unevenly, strengthening one edge while weakening the entire internal matrix. Astrid rejects the result, even though ordinary enhancers would call any visible improvement a successful experiment. She wants refinement that can be repeated safely, not a lucky transformation useful for one public demonstration. Kane respects the distinction because the same principle separates reliable military techniques from suicidal trump cards. They lower conversion speed, saturate life wave before ignition, and rotate the flame against its natural direction. The new method produces a smaller fire, whose structure remains stable far longer than the impressive earlier version. Astrid finally smiles when repeated scans return nearly identical results across 3 separate test artifacts. Their 7th revolution attempt creates heat strong enough to activate protective formations throughout her underground workspace. Neighbors assume another noble laboratory malfunctioned, while Kane quietly reinforces walls through controlled darkness. Astrid notices his reflex protects the building before preserving their experiment, adding another detail to her judgment. They succeed only after changing the conversion vector during ignition instead of maintaining one fixed ratio. Kane stores the completed flame inside a specialized sphere, preventing ambient energy from changing its structure. The pair walks increasingly slowly whenever their discussions move outside, extending conversations neither openly wants to finish. Astrid has spent years treated as broken because she cannot circulate the energy everyone else considers natural. Kane never describes her disability as hidden superiority because intelligence does not erase the barriers she actually faces. Instead, he builds arrangements where her analysis controls outcomes his cultivation alone could never produce. That practical respect matters more than compliments from people still unwilling to place resources under her authority. Astrid eventually shares the Golden Book's most restricted section, concerning flames beyond 8 revolution. Its author describes failure rates approaching certainty unless conversion and condensation remain in dynamic balance. Kane compares the warning with enhancement module calculations and discovers both systems assume a fixed ignition phase. Astrid proposes saturating life wave earlier, then maintaining a 2-to-1 relationship while density continues rising. The idea should reduce destructive turbulence, although one error could turn their workspace into a crater. They move the experiment into Silent Forest, choosing a valley already emptied by Kane's earlier monster hunts. Dark Hand scouts close every route without knowing what their masked leader intends to ignite inside. Astrid remains behind layered barriers, while Kane holds the forming flame directly within Ego Wave control. The first layer compresses cleanly, followed by another, until colors collapse toward an almost transparent center. At the 8th transition, the flame shakes and releases pressure that slices surrounding cliffs like invisible blades. Cain follows Astrid's ratio instead of increasing brute containment, allowing excess energy to circulate rather than accumulate. The 9th revolution forms as a silent sphere, carrying more danger than every explosive failure preceding it. Neither celebrates immediately, because stability after ignition remains the part no previous calculation could guarantee. Minutes pass while pseudo-atomic scans show the internal vectors maintaining their intended relationship without correction. Astrid laughs first, exhausted enough to forget the guarded posture she maintains around noble observers. Cain gives her the completed sphere to inspect, trusting someone without cultivation to hold a Wave King changing flame. She returns it carefully and warns that success in formation does not guarantee success on a living target. Bodies resist transformation through will, bloodline, injuries, and countless variables artifacts never possess. Cain agrees, already knowing controlled trials will require subjects capable of understanding the risks and consequences. Their discovery also creates danger, because every Aatrox faction would kill to monopolize repeatable 9-revolution refinement. Dark Hand receives new orders to spread several false rumors describing Cain's research as ordinary artifact repair. Blue Crow plants conflicting stories around the gala, while Old River purchases low-grade materials hiding the genuine pattern. Astrid keeps the equations outside network devices, storing handwritten copies where remote intrusion cannot reach them. Neither calls the precautions trust, yet both are now protecting work whose value binds their futures together. Their successful research attracts Marin, an Aatrox with willpower approaching divine ascension and reasons for watching Astrid. Cain updates the man's threat level immediately, understanding that incomplete cultivation can still conceal godlike danger. He captures attackers sent into Silent Forest and places one inside the cauldron as the first living test. The captive receives clear instructions: guide the energy with absolute focus or suffer catastrophic failure. Cain selected the attackers because their group entered Silent Forest intending to kill Cain and seize Astrid's work. Capturing them therefore protects his identity while providing Wave King bodies suitable for dangerous controlled testing. He does not promise safety, but each prisoner receives one genuine choice between refinement and immediate judgment. Several assume acceptance means freedom regardless of outcome, until Cain corrects that interpretation before starting. Success earns survival and possible service. Refusal returns them to the consequences of their failed assassination. The first Aatrox enters the cauldron, while companions watch through a transparent section of reinforced material. 9-revolution energy surrounds his evolution core and begins forcing improvements through blood, bones, and armor. The prisoner fights the current instead of guiding it, treating every foreign force as another enemy attack. Cain orders him to relax resistance and direct pressure along existing cultivation pathways before instability spreads. Panic prevents comprehension, making the Aatrox increase output precisely when the refinement requires controlled acceptance. Cracks appear across his biological armor as internal energy pushes outward without finding a compatible route. Apex lowers the estimated survival probability with every second, but Cain still attempts to stabilize the external flame. The module can control refinement energy, yet it cannot replace decisions occurring inside another person's body. Old River watches through Dark Hand surveillance and finally understands why willpower matters beside cultivation strength. The first test proves raw resistance can become weakness when transformation demands cooperation rather than domination. Cain records every failure point, refusing to let the prisoner's death produce nothing except fear among observers. The second subject enters after receiving an updated explanation based on the previous internal collapse. He guides the opening circulation correctly, allowing 9-revolution energy to strengthen several genetic structures. Then greed takes control, and he pulls more energy toward his core than the body can safely process. Cain closes the flame immediately, but accumulated pressure has already damaged the subject beyond stable recovery. Radiance of life prevents instant death, while the biochamber repairs enough tissue for further examination. The Aatrox survives without receiving the full improvement, becoming evidence that interruption can reduce catastrophic losses. Cain could attempt again later, although the prisoner first needs months of healing and mental rehabilitation. Gennaro observes both outcomes and realizes the masked leader is adjusting procedure rather than gambling with random lives. That makes the coming refinement more frightening, because Cain's increasing success removes hope that simple chaos will intervene. When Gennaro's turn arrives, he requests every available scan from his own body before entering the cauldron. Kane provides it, explaining which damaged channels require caution and which bloodline traits should accept enhancement naturally. Gennaro studies the information until fear becomes a sequence of specific actions he can actually perform. Inside the cauldron, he follows the flame instead of attempting to overpower it through ordinary Wave King instincts. Pain still tears through his body, but every controlled circulation raises the probability displayed before Kane. The refinement reaches his blood rebirth foundation and begins strengthening something ordinary essence methods cannot easily touch. Kane uses order to maintain external balance, while Gennaro preserves internal direction through exhausted concentration. For the first time, every revolution completes without damage exceeding the body's accelerated ability to recover. The cauldron opens around an Aatrox whose aura feels denser, cleaner, and fundamentally more stable than before. Gennaro looks at Kane with fear unchanged, but reverence now occupies the space where simple hatred once lived. The Scarlet King then enters the cauldron himself, rather than demanding followers accept risks he avoids. Gennaro secretly hopes for an explosion, but Kane controls the refinement through order and precise biological analysis. His rebirth heart improves despite existing in another body, while essence structures become far denser. The success lets him refine Gennaro again through genetic enhancement and upgrade Slaughter and the Blood Nails. Dark Hand's leaders receive resources, stronger lineages, and assignments designed to make the faction useful beyond fear. Kane hunts an endless poison raven next, a Grand King beast surrounded by lethal miasma. The demonic phantom attacks directly, while the Scarlet King hides through shadow and studies the raven's reactions. Poison rots the avatar repeatedly, forcing Kane to spend energy repairing damage faster than the beast tires. He channels radiance of life and power through the evolution core, something neither path was designed to allow. Golden energy enlarges the phantom and lets its fangs reach the raven's neck through the toxic storm. Kane finishes the beast through its eye with the sundering concept, then preserves the poisonous corpse carefully. The Grand King body will become a weapon against stronger enemies, rather than another pile of harvested resources. Nearby, Gennaro defeats a late King beast and expects the accomplishment to earn visible approval. Kane considers battle power equal to cultivation merely average, revealing how brutally his own standard has changed. They return to the hidden mountain, where Old River and the remaining leaders wait around the refinement cauldron. Everyone understands that Kane did not join Dark Hand. He has come to take it from the inside. The Scarlet King orders Old River to remove his armor and enter the cauldron first. He explains the danger plainly, including the previous subjects whose bodies failed under 9 Revolution energy. Old River chooses advancement over permanent fear, climbs inside, and gathers every fragment of willpower available. Kane closes the lid and releases the flame while the other criminal leaders listen from outside. That is where the supplied story ends, with the refinement beginning and Dark Hand awaiting its transformation. Kane Lorifer started as the weakest measured student in a hallway controlled by people with better talent. He survived because humiliation became discipline, discipline became judgment, and judgment became power under conscious control. Every major breakthrough changed the decision before him instead of simply increasing a number on a screen. Cadet life taught Kane when survival required ruthlessness and when anger would only create another corpse. His vice captain service taught Kane that leadership means buying supplies before asking soldiers to risk their lives. Youngblood champion Kane protected civilians, while Titans and Wave Kings turned politics into civil war. Now the Scarlet King deliberately builds hidden power among people humanity taught him to call monsters. The original Red King answered genocide by destroying everything connected to those responsible. Kane carries the same capacity for destruction, but order gives him the power to choose where it stops. That distinction may decide whether he becomes the world's greatest protector or its final catastrophe. For now, 1/9 Revolution flame burns inside a hidden mountain on the enemy continent. An underworld faction waits for its new master. Gaia believes its prodigy is missing, and ancient beings watch silently. The Academy once called Kane worthless because a machine measured the talent inside his body. Nobody thought to measure the king chained inside his soul.